some kind of prime position?
Yes, it'll help it, but we've also got sustainable fuels. I think those are ignored to a great extent, but Formula One will be using a sustainable fuel, as are other forms of motorsport, including our cars, and those have a place to play as well.
Final question, as head of ProDrive, you're involved in so many aspects of motorsport. Which of them would you say was the jewel in your crown?
Oh, it's like saying, who's your favourite child? We've been involved in every form of motorsport over the years, but historically, I suppose my background's in rallying, the World Rally Championship, and of course going off to Dakar with our team in January is going to be an exciting prospect for us.
Yes, okay. It's Dakar, you say, but it's the Dakar Rally. And of course, it's taking place in Saudi Arabia. It's the fifth time it has taken place there. You're comfortable leading a country that questionable human rights are.
Well, sport transcends a lot of issues. I think it's important to use sport to actually address some of, bring people into the modern world. And I've seen Saudi change dramatically over the last 10 years, and I'm sure there's a long way to go yet, but sport is playing a very strong part in it.
Okay, David Richards, thank you very much. That takes us to our tips for today. Willie Shanton, World City number 2, Mark Wren, and also from the Willie Shanton 350, number 1, Edith Watt. Well, thank you very much indeed. Quick look at the weather now. Wet start in the south today, drier later, blustery showers and sunny spells in the north. Just going to give you that WhatsApp number which I rushed through a moment ago if you want to get in touch with your experiences of the based out assisted dying. 0330 1234 346. Sure, the start of the day.
Very good morning, Robinson Customer. It's 24 minutes to 9. Mr. Costello has been.
BBC News understands that schools in England are to receive government guidance telling them that they should generally tell the parents if their child wants to change their gender. The advice is also likely to say that schools could have single-sex toys.
Why people want to change the gender?
The UK is joining an international coalition
Coco?
of merchant ships sailing
Why
through
people
the
want to
Red Sea.
change the gender?
Commercial vessels
What's
coming
wrong with
south
them?
from Iranian-backed Houthi rebels.
You want to be a girl?
What am I, an idiot?
Do you want Nia to be a boy?
What?
Do you want Nia to be a boy? No, just saying people want to change the gender. Do you want Coben to be a girl?
No. Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why? Coben will still punch you though.
Very much goes along with what these organisations were reporting at the time, especially that it was an Israeli missile.
와, 이거 지금
But
자체
that
이거.
still exists, doesn't it? And we think now that it wasn't an Israeli missile, but it was a missile fired from inside Gaza by Islamic Jihad. The criticism is that you're very quick to attack Israel, but not so quick to attack the other side.
Every Muslim probably opened the communication and never named any party except in the first communication after 5 days. And this is really a good example of what we're facing over the last 2-3 weeks. It's shortcuts.
我覺得你下次可唔可以真係做啲嘢？睇下點行啫？依家咁鬼塞。
I mean, it's very surprising for us to be
你每次都話 sorry 哥哥。你睇下啲佬。
But this misinformation, disinformation, the hate speech takes a dimension which is really scary.
How much hope is there now, do you think, that you are going to get access to that?
I mean, we said it repeatedly, my president said it repeatedly to all the people concerned, we need first to have a political agreement. There is no way that in the middle of an active conflict, after keep fighting, when I say fighting, it's just 2-3 streets, sometimes a block from where we live or from where we work. How can we together and produce huge
Fabrizio Carboni, International Committee of the Red Cross's Regional Director for the Near and Middle East. Thank you very much.
17 minutes to 9. It's often later research that our NHS is leading the world, not so when it comes to the care of expectant and new mothers. Children. There's been a series of scandals and a series of inquiries into what's gone wrong. Last month, we revealed that 67% of the two-thirds are rated either inadequate or required policy. Demand decline. Let's talk now to Donna White, who has carried out one of the most significant inquiries they know, and is carrying out another at the moment. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Let's start with the what will matter to many listeners here. Have you reckon whether the hospital treatment themselves receive the
I believe that they can. We think that in very safe place to have a vast majority of those have access to healthcare. Having said that, there are cases I have seen the government are not doing enough to ensure ongoing safety for any single mother in this country.
There are different problems in different hospitals and trusts, which is what we're looking at the moment. Still a pattern though, beyond our own
I think it is really important that you understand that workforce shortages and underfunding, there's been more than a decade of underfunding in migrant is at the heart of all this. So if we can just look back at the report and public education selection 2021, hearing countries chair of a select committee, and that very clearly states the maternity leave policy 200 to 350 million pounds funded immediately, that was kept under review. So here we are, 2.5 years into that report, and of course we had endorsed that in March 2022, and we are only halfway there. So exit concerns have been around 180 million, which is a lot of money, but with the ongoing challenges in the services, we need to be really clear that we're only halfway, so that healthy selection holder needs to be, and that's 2.5 years ago in 2021.
But a vast amount of money is being paid out in clinical negligence claims here. You can't surely argue that all of that is down to staffing problems and lack of money. There appears to be negligence, poor management, a series of what seems fair to call scams.
Absolutely. So you'll be aware that any declaration of public
Go on.
I'm aware that justice, it's in a paper issue, and I didn't know at all what I know about it now. And I think one of the things that the drama does is bring home the devastating impact on people's lives of those that consume unsafe conditions so aggressively.
You should argue playing not only someone who's very much still alive and still around, but also playing a part in the drama that the final act of life is really in.
I think that's really satisfying to see. I spent a lot of time with Des, and it's not the most ever talk to him, whereas being able to rely on James as an incredible resource for what it was like to live through this, and a sort of complete authority, to fix their issues, in terms of court procedure, what you do when it was a real asset as an actor to have people sharing as much as you did with you. So that was really enjoyable. But I think as James has raised as well, it's really important for many people to see their families, some people senior, Alan Bates is still campaigning for justice. A lot of postmasters who shared their stories very bravely with our women's rights and schools want to see somebody held accountable for this, whether that is for now, or the CEO, whether that is by the president or the director. It's a very clear point made by the line that these people were either negligent or incompetent. They allowed this to happen on their watch, or they misled courts, and there's a more serious case there.
Seeing, talking to you now, you are involved not just as an actor, but defense in field.
Well, I think it's not often that you get to do a drama that can have a real world impact. And I think we're scheduled this to arrive at a really sensitive moment. It's going to start the year off, and it's going to be a huge year, but there are thousands and thousands of sub-postmasters who are still waiting for compensation extremely slowly in courts. And a lot of people who, I think, they'll benefit, their story will benefit, Alan's campaign will benefit from people just understanding this issue. It can seem at first glance slightly opaque. The computer terminal goes wrong, there's some accounting issues that crop up. Are people guilty? Are they not? And what Gwyneth Hughes, our writer, does very well is just show how easily people's lives fell apart because of a computing error.
James Hartley, thank you. John Hollingworth as well, who plays James in ITV's new drama. It's called Mr. Bates versus the Post Office. It airs on ITV1 from New Year's Day. That's it? Yep, New Year's Day. ITVX as well on the 4th.
Now it's 5 to 9. Now, fact, fiction, children's cookery. Oh God, what on earth shall we buy Dad for Christmas? All key categories in the world of publishing at this, the most important time of the year for those who sell books, because so many are bought now. Later today, this festive season's #1 bestseller will be revealed, but what is the list of possible winners? Tell us about the literary and decidedly non-literary tests of the nation. We're joined by Erica Wagner, author, former Times literary editor, Boyd Tonkin, who chaired this year's Orwell Prize, and is a writer and critic, was the Independent literary editor. Morning to you both, Erica. First of all, I mean, most of these books don't get read that are given at Christmas, do they? They sort of prop open doors and sit on coffee tables.
Well, I have to say, looking at this list, I have a little pang of nostalgia from the days when I was kind of inputting bestseller lists, when I was with the editor of the Times. And there's the Guinness Book of World Records. It's kind of amazing that in this internet age, you would think all of this would be available online. I kind of love that people are still buying the book of the Guinness Book of World Records.
There is a novel in the preliminary list, isn't there, Boyd Tonkin? Richard Osman, who seems to sell them in vast quantities, has got one in the top five.
His Thursday Murder Club series has been the most phenomenal success over the past few years. But it also satisfies that need for escapism. It's crime, but it's cozy crime. In a way, it's comforting. That in the end, all will seem to be right with the world, which is maybe what you want at Christmas.
Yes, Erica, is that what you want for a good Christmas read if you're not buying the best-selling graphic novel now on Netflix, because it's quite likely to come in at number one?
Yes, I think so. I think we do like something cozy at Christmas. I would say I think there are two murder-related titles on this list, because there's also murder puzzles. But again, murder seems scary. But of course, in this genre, problems are solved. You feel safe at the end. You know, I am someone who always returns to A Christmas Carol.
Do you really hire Christmas?
Yes, I do. I do.
And you get something new from it each time?
I think I do. I think that's the pleasure of great books, that as we get older, you know, as I get closer to Scrooge's age, you think about the story differently. You see things you didn't before. So there's something new and something comforting.
Do you pick up the classic Christmas carol?
Well, I pick up classic, but I try and pick up, as it were, new classic, something that I haven't read before. And what's so neat at the moment, the collector's stories of the wonderful Anglo-Irish writer Elizabeth Bowen. And short stories are good at Christmas because you can pick them up and put them down. And this is a volume I very, very warmly recommend.
Oh, it's nice to hear you recommending things like that, because there's a lot of titles on there I've never heard of. You know, the technology's changed it. Social media's changed it.
Social media's changed some things, but not everything. It's very interesting to look at some of those bestsellers, like for instance, Alice Oakley, the Heartstopper series, which began as a kind of web cartoon. It ends up in a book, and if you look at the history of publishing, whatever new platforms come along, everyone in the end wants to finish in the book, because this is a permanent, with a significant way of recording their talent.
Yeah. Erica?
But yes, I completely agree. The crowning achievement of the book. And I think that's a very good point that Boyd makes of how much we still value books, and even that we're doing this item, that this is what we're talking about, is what books people get.
And a
are
free
given
last thought,
for
Erica,
the holidays.
and telly can take us back to books, can't they? People knowing Slow Horses, for example, from the telly,
Exactly.
discovering Eric Ross's book from the series.
That's right, that's right. You know, we've had all this love and recognition from Nick Heron, not that he was unrecognized before, but it just brings things to a new level, and that's always a wonderful gift.
Well, enjoy what you read. I've got four countries right now, my children's story. And what was it over Christmas? What your dad brought me? Eric Dalton and Boyd Tompkins. As it must, so the cover of the Joshua presented by Carmen. Studio from Nick and for me. Good morning.
BBC News at 9 o'clock. Schools in England are expected to receive guidance later today about children who identify as transgender. The document was due out in the summer. Guidance is likely to say that schools will be required to inform parents if their children say they wish to change their gender identity. The shipping giant Maersk says it will be rerouting some of its Red Sea vessels around Africa via the Cape of Good Hope because of security concerns. Yemen's Houthi rebels have been targeting commercial ships with missiles. The attacks are in a show of solidarity with Hamas. A report is warning of difficult and frankly unpalatable policy choices to reform NHS dentistry in England. The independent think tank, Pinnacle Trust, suggests changes will be needed to preserve a basic service for those most in need. The proposals include increasing the intervals between routine checkups to 1 year. The broadcaster and founder of Childline, Vanessa Ransom, has called for MPs to be given a free dose on assisted dying. The 83-year-old is currently receiving treatment for stage 4 lung cancer and has not ruled out taking her own life if the Swiss court to give us. A former president of the Royal Society of Medicine, Baroness Laura Finlay, told Today the focus should not be on legalising assisted dying.
We have palliative care in this country, but what isn't working is access for everyone to the palliative care they need. We still have hospices only getting a third of their funding from the NHS. We're still relying on voluntary donations to make sure that people can live well.
A volcano in Iceland is erupting, with lava spewing from a fissure that's about 2.5 miles long. The eruption near the fishing town of Grindelwald had been expected for weeks. The Prime Minister said the country was hoping for the best, but acknowledged the eruption was considerable. The England cricketer Harry Brook has secured a deal worth the equivalent of about £280,000 to play in the Indian Premier League. It was bought at fair auction by Delhi Capitals. BBC News.
Coming up here on BBC Radio 4, a school counsellor tells one-to-one about the impact of social media on mothers. That's in half an hour. We explore the psychology of gluttony as Nathan. Let's find out how you're getting your home ready for Christmas. Call you and yours. That's after the news at midday. That's all to come, but now on BBC Radio 4, Professor Jim Al-Khalili considers our fascination with artificial intelligence and whether we need to be worried about sentient machines in The Life Scientific.
Hello, and welcome to our final episode of the year. Also, our 300th Life Scientific, coming to you complete with audience from London's Royal Institution, a centre of scientific education and celebration for more than 2 centuries. Hopefully, today we're contributing a little bit towards that grand tradition. Now, I propose to consider the question, can machines think? Those aren't actually my words. That question was the opening line of a paper written in 1950 by the great British computer scientist Alan Turing, leading to the test for machine sentience, known as the Turing test. And here we are more than 70 years on, still fascinated by the same question. In fact, more relevant than ever, now that artificial intelligence has migrated from science fiction into our everyday lives. We might not quite be at the sentient robot stage, but we have seen incredible breakthroughs recently, from facial recognition software to ChatGPT. And so to my guest, Michael Woolridge is a professor of computer science at the University of Oxford and the director of foundational AI research at the Alan Turing Institute. And despite the dramatic AI threats in futuristic films or in media headlines, Michael is reassuring positive about this technology's future, saying the most common fears are misplaced. His is an opinion worth listening to. Mike published hundreds of articles and a number of books on AI. In 2020, he received the coveted Lovelace Medal from the British Computer Society. And this year, he happens to be delivering the Royal Institution's famous Christmas lectures from this very theatre. He advises us to forget the science fiction, insisting the science fact is much more interesting. Professor Michael Woolridge, welcome to Life Scientific. So, what is it about artificial intelligence do you think that always held such a fascination for us?
I think it's a dream that resonates throughout human history. Go back to the ancient Greeks. They had the myth of Hephaestus, who was blacksmith to the gods, who fashioned metal creatures and then bring them to life to serve the gods in Olympus. In the Middle Ages, there was the myth of the golem. In medieval Prague, this creature that was created from mud and brought to life with a magical incantation. And then you've got Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, the origin text for basically all of science fiction, as far as I can see. And so this idea of bringing something inanimate to life really resonates with us. And I think it relates to the idea that we have children and we lose control of those children, because that's always the next part of the story.
And yet, we still sometimes think of AI as futuristic, it's yet to come. But of course, it already plays a number of roles in our everyday lives. What aspect do you think has had the biggest impact so far?
I think genuinely this year is a watershed year for technology. But the funny thing is, AI seeps into our lives in all sorts of ways that we don't realise. I'll give you one example. Automated translation. So this is one of the original dreams of AI in the US. Huge amount of money poured into automated translation, and the big goal in 1950 was to translate from Russian to English for obvious reasons, right? But just at the turn of the century, automated translation felt like something that was a long way into the future.
But quietly, AI delivers Google Translate and a range of other automated translation tools. And people just take them for granted. You know, they get you around your holiday and scoff a lot. Or the last time I was in China, they managed to translate the instructions for the air conditioner in my room so I could get to sleep at night. And people don't even realise it's AI. And that's a classic example of what happens with the technology.
Yes, we adapt very easily, very quickly, don't we? And as I mentioned in the introduction, you've previously suggested that fears around the potential threat from AI are in fact misplaced. What do you mean by that?
My point there is that we all have some ideas about what AI is and what AI might be because we watch movies and TV shows and we read books and play computer games which portray mostly quite frightening pictures of AI. And naturally that's what people gravitate towards, the dystopian. You know, I can start talking to somebody at a party and tell them that I do AI and predictably within 30 seconds dystopian scenarios
The
come up.
Terminator
Yeah,
scenario.
exactly.
Yeah.
Because they're incredibly compelling and we're just very, very, very used to them. My worry is that whenever those scenarios come up, it sucks all the oxygen out of the room, as one colleague put it, and the stuff that I think is really immediate and that we really need to worry about in the near future never really gets attention, and that's what bothers me about it. I think, again, those sort of worst-case dystopian scenarios, I can't tell you that there is some mathematical law or physical law which says that they're impossible, but in all of the discussion about them, nobody has ever given me a plausible, realistic scenario for how AI might be an existential risk. While at the same time, I think there are a number of very concrete and real scenarios for how it might be a risk in other ways. And actually, one of the interesting things that we're beginning to see, I think, is to change the discussion from existential risk to catastrophic risk. And catastrophic risk means something really bad happening, but not an existential threat. And I think the debate is much more healthily focused on catastrophic risk rather than
AI that's flying an aircraft.
Exactly, and it goes wrong, and
wrong, yeah.
that's a catastrophe, and you know, and it's an awful, awful incident. But it's an engineering problem, and an engineering problem that we can face up to, rather than just obsessing about very speculative scenarios, which I emphasise, I've never heard a single genuinely plausible scenario for how AI might be an existential risk.
I should also mention that helpfully, for those of us who might not be entirely across this technology, you've written a book that can help even the least computer-savvy person. The Ladybird book on AI. I can say from personal experience, having written a couple of Ladybird books myself, writing those books is huge fun, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So what happened was I'd been signed on to write a much longer book on AI, which indeed has been published. And my agent phoned me up after about a month after we signed up for this and said, look, I know this isn't what you signed up for, and maybe it's not going to be your cup of tea at all, but how would you feel about writing a Ladybird book on AI? And I'm like, what? Do you think I have to even think about that? The Ladybird books are such an iconic part.
Well, you and I, Renee, grew up with them as kids. In fact, I gather you owned a Ladybird science book when you were young that has particular resonance now.
Yeah, no, and it's absolutely true. I had the Michael Faraday, a Ladybird book of Michael Faraday, and it was the story of this great scientist and so on. But basically, the last page of the book is about the Christmas lectures, and it's Michael Faraday in this lecture theatre. And it immediately came back to me when I got asked to do the Christmas lectures. It was, wow, it was a real Christian moment.
Well, Michael Aldrich, let's go back then to your childhood days. You were born in Wakefield, West Yorkshire in 1966, the second son to John and Jean. Tell me about your parents.
Loving parents. My dad was a mill manager, ended up working for a cider manufacturer. My mum was a secretary, never was a career person. But yeah, it was a very loving household, and somehow I gravitated towards science at a very early age.
And what was it that inspired you?
Difficult to know exactly, but I really vividly remember Apollo. The moon landings was a really, really big part of my childhood. And I remember being given a spacesuit for a Christmas present, a NASA spacesuit, which family legend has it, I wore until it was far too small, and then my mum had to cut all the NASA logos off and put them on other clothes so I could continue to wear them and so on. So I was obsessed with science as a youngster.
Of course, computers weren't common back in those days. I gather it was as a teenager that you first encountered one in your former high school.
Yeah. So I would have been about 13 or 14, and one of my friends said there was a shop that sold computers in the show me, and there was a shop, and there at the window there was a TRS-80 Model 1 computer, by today's standards incredibly crude, and it had a green screen and a keyboard and a set recorder to record your program. So we went in the shop, and the guys in the shop, I find it's kind of hard to believe now, but they said, yeah, do you want to play on it? You're welcome to sit there. So I literally learned to program, sat in the window of the shop, typing away. There's no exaggeration whatsoever. And I taught myself programming, and bang, something flipped with me. Mentally, that was it. Computers was what I fell in love with there again. You went to the local state school. You did fairly well, I gather, in your O levels, but you were a bit too relaxed when it came to A levels. Extraordinarily lazy teenager. Thinking back on it, I didn't do a stroke of work at all, and it didn't go well. But you did well enough to get maths, physics, computer science A level, and you got into Wolverhampton Polytechnic. Yeah, and it was a really great education, and I didn't realise when I signed up that they focused on the thing that I fell in love with, which was artificial intelligence. And what really opened my eyes is I spent a year, part of the degree, working for a government organisation that ran JANET, Community Civic Networks. And the team was a joint network team, and they were based just south of Oxford, which was my first exposure to Oxford, living in Oxford while I was working south there. And JANET at the time was a very small network which basically connected universities together, and there was virtually nothing else on it. But working there for a year really made me realise that the future of computing was going to be networks. It just suddenly became blindingly obvious that this is where the technology was going. And it really had quite a big effect on me for that reason. Well, Michael, you graduated in 1989. You went on to do a PhD in computation at the University of Manchester's Institute of Science and Technology, which of course later merged with the University of Manchester. And this is where you started looking at multi-agent systems. Can you explain what these are? Yeah, so I've had my eyes open to the fact that the future of computing was going to be networks, and I knew that. And then in my final year, as I mentioned at Wolverhampton, I focused on AI. And I thought, okay, so the future of AI must be networked AI in some sense. And that's what kicked off this idea for me of multi-agent systems. Basically, instead of just you talking to an AI program like the way you played with ChatGPT, you have a conversation with ChatGPT. Instead of you having a conversation, the AI has conversations with other AI programs. So my standard example is, I've got Siri on my phone, you've got Alexa on yours. I could phone you up to arrange a meeting, or my Siri could phone you up to arrange a meeting, but why doesn't my Siri just talk to your Alexa? And that, in a nutshell, is what multi-agent systems is all about. It's the idea that we have AI programs that are working on our behalf, like, in principle, like Siri and Alexa and so on are supposed to do, that are talking to other AI programs. And it turns out that raises an enormous raft of scientific issues that have been the mainstay of my career ever since. Well, you've met your now wife, Janine, while you were intern in Oxford. She'd moved with you to Manchester, and I hear you both made the most of the local music scene. You're talking the early 90s here. Well, older members of the audience are going to remember this. 1989 was the year of Manchester. The Happy Mondays, Stone Roses.
There's a few grunts of murmurs of approval around the audience.
We, while I were in my PhD, we lived on the street that Manchester residents will recognise as Whitworth Street, which is right in the middle of Manchester, and it was the street that the Hacienda, at the time the world's most famous nightclub, was actually on, and that's quite an experience.
Well, after your PhD, Mike, your academic career got going pretty quickly. Just days after handing in your thesis, you got a job, a full-time job, as a lecturer at Manchester Polytechnic, just as it was becoming Manchester Metropolitan University. That's quite a shift from, clubbing PhD students to full-time academics.
A new tax band has been created by the Scottish Government as part of its budget for the next financial year. The SNP Finance Minister, Shona Robertson, said the advanced band would be set at 45%, with taxpayers earning more than £75,225 per year. Top rate of tax levied against those who earn more than £125,000 will also rise to 48%. Speaking in the Scottish Parliament for the past half hour, Robertson said the increases were proportionate.
The Scottish Fiscal Commission estimate that these policy decisions will raise a further £82 million in revenue next year. we've chosen to keep the new band settled above the top of the unpromoted teacher salary scale, above the police inspector, and above a band teacher band.
The Housing Secretary, Michael Gove, says league tables of counties in England will be published, showing their performance when it comes to planning decisions. In a speech in London, Gove said the plan would help identify good practice while showing how the planning system is gamed by some councils. Draft guidance says schools and colleges in England have no general duty to allow children to change their gender identity. It also says parents should not be excluded from the decision-making process. Transgender charity Mermaid has described the guidance as unworkable, unarticulate and absurd. Iceland's government says international flights are unlikely to be affected by the helicopter protesting convention. Rather, it's been skiing for a 2.5-mile fissure since last night. EasyJet has confirmed that they're looking at 150 new planes after the plan received several days ago. The airline said it will, Airbus, increase capacity to improve fuel efficiency. The nightclub has been fined £120,000 after its bar staff mistakenly gave customers caustic soda with salt flavored English shots. The company containing alcohol and congestion chemical that Tiger Talbot and Central London in December 2021. BBC News.
This week's Dr. Phil Hammond's guest is the leading public health expert, John Ashton. John explains what drives him to work for healthier lives and communities. You can hear more at 3:30. Now on BBC Radio 4, Jay Rayner and his team of culinary experts are in Bedfordshire. This week's episode.
Hello and welcome to the Kitchen Cabinet. This week we're in Luton, doffing our cap to a famous hat-making heartland. The industry has long been in the town's DNA. There were over 500 hat manufacturers in Luton during the 1800s, at one stage producing over 70 million hats a year. Even the town's Premier League football team were known as the Hatters. But the hats we're interested in today are naturally chef's hats, the extra full grandeur sort sported by today's expert panel of chefs and food writers, here to solve your kitchen conundrum. The sort of mad hat is key part, if you like. It's Jordan Burke, Larato Michela, Samaya Osmani, and our resident food historian, Dr. Annie Gray. Ladies and gentlemen, your Kitchen Cabinet panel. Now, in the interest of minimising reputational damage, I think it's important to note that our panelists aren't actually sitting here peering down on the audience wearing a flamboyant chef hat. I agree that was quite common. But Annie, why do chefs sometimes wear some kind of hat?
Well, there's a mixed difference. You'll find stuff about that that's written to Egyptian priests and all sorts of stuff. But the real story has so much of higher questions. It's entertainment. And as usual, it's related to Catherine Cohen and this Hudfield, who have named something not on this panel before. Cohen is a 19th century chef who decided that perhaps cooking hats was sometimes a kind of food manual organised wear. I mean, chefs have worn hats in ancient worn hats, absolutely everybody, male chefs wearing hats. He wanted to make this easier. And then Swampy, when he got hold of the idea later on in the 19th century, he was very influenced by the idea of the kitchen uniform. He used to see chefs who made them instantly recognizable, white, high for Puritan chefs who were jumpers who were a bit wrong. So he put his chefs into chef's whites and this very tall, starchy hat, and that of course started and this idea cropped up that the more senior you were, the more you had to do with your feet. And I'm trying to look at the way this came from, and the best I can come up with, it seems within a kind of 1950s book, thought up by many chefs, and so it's something that is
Thank you for that. Later on in the show, we're going to get to another thing, which is our beautiful record. The most larger make one. Let's take our first question from Tracy Jones.
Yeah, this is asking on behalf of my husband. What's going on with his risotto is every time he cooks it, he finds it's all hard. He's got Italian neighbours, they've taught him, he's still got the bone, and it's still hard.
Okay, so the first thing I have to ask you, Tracy, is your husband here tonight?
No,
no, I'm going to go to get some tickets.
All right, so it's awesome. So we're going to talk about what's his name?
David.
So David is having problems with the risotto. Although from the sound of things, I think it's Tracy Jones having problems with David's risotto. In the interest of marriage guidance.
So, do you know which type of rice is in there?
Arborio and
Carnarone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got Italian neighbours, so they tell us what's right.
Yeah. So it sounds like he's on the right track. Carnarone has higher starch content, firmer. So the good news is it's harder to overcook, so you don't want to just slow up the ramen down. But possibly, at the beginning when you're kind of sauteing the rice in the butter and olive oil before you're adding in any stock, maybe you want to really heat up the most before you start adding in all the rest of it.
Durasa, any tips?
I'd say any rice that's cooked needs more moisture, so you need to maybe gauge how you're adding the stock intermittently, and then if it's still hard, you add a little bit more stock, just keep it low, slow, steady, and eventually it needs to be more moisture.
They may be too much sound.
Samaya, you cook a lot of rice.
Yeah, I think that one thing before last week is really especially to add hot water on your stock, so stock is very rich, and you keep adding loads of stock and it's too rich. So maybe water with 1 spoonful of hot stock and then another spoonful of hot water, so you can keep going on like that without making it too rich until the rice does actually absorb that. And they offer one.
And you've got to take them off.
Yeah, you might not know it. It's got the pressure cooker will take the difference. So you chuck in the rice in hot oil as you normally would, stir it around till it's ready for translation. That's about more than a minute and a half. Throw in some white wine, boil it. That's another 30 seconds because you really do that sweet part. Then you're going to carry the stock, give it a stir, skip the lid off. 7 minutes, maybe 8 minutes. I would always use Carnarone rice, which takes a bit longer. And then take the lid off, give it a little bit of oil, maybe another minute if the stock's fully gone in. Chuck in as much parmesan as you can physically muster, and then any of the flavourings which you pre-cook on the side, drop down for 10 minutes.
I have to say, Tracy, I've got a suggestion, which is, as it's not really been very successful for a while, why don't you just stop? But there are other things you can perhaps practice.
No, that was the... This is one thing he wants to crack.
Okay, well, we wish him and you and your marriage well for the future. I hope our advice is of some help.
Thank you.
You're listening to The Kitchen Cabinet on BBC Radio 4 and BBC Sounds, and this week we're in Luton in Bedfordshire. Now, as promised at the beginning of the programme, we're joined by Bangladeshi chef and holder of the Guinness record for the world's largest onion bhaji, Oli Khan, MBE. Oli, welcome to the show. Before we go any further, let's talk about this giant onion bhaji of yours. What made you do it?
Well, basically, it was one of my dream projects, which I wanted to do. I always, because I used to grow up seeing Guinness World Record. And
And you wanted a Guinness World Record?
Yeah, I wanted to do the Guinness World Record. And how do I do that? And what shall I make on it? So I was thinking about an onion bhaji. And I saw one of the guys from Bradford did 102 kilogram of onion bhaji. And that was the world record. And I thought, okay, I need to beat that.
So what did you get to? What was your world record beating weight?
Beating weight was 175.6 kilogram.
How did you cook that? Because it's going to be quite thick, it's going to be quite heavy.
Yes, indeed it is. Basically, the fryer was a big challenge. I could design the whole fryer myself. I found a fabricator who can do the fryer for me. So that took me nearly 2 years. So that was the biggest challenge. So like start with a lot of practice, and at the end, that was another 2 years probably. And then at the end, I did the Guinness World Record in Luton, and that was 2017 for 399 kilogram. And it didn't happen because it was way too big. And inside wasn't cooked properly. So this is making it smaller. So I did it once again in 2020, and it was 170, almost 176 kilogram, and I did it.
Congratulations.
It's for the charity actually. It's for the
Well, I was going to ask you, what did you do with it after the record was achieved? What did you do with it? 175 kilos.
Yeah, according to Guinness World Record, it has to be eatable plus it all has to be finished. So you have to distribute that. So we had about 200 students present at that place. They ate it, and then we have like another probably about 200 homeless people who have distributed to them.
Excellent stuff. How did you spice it?
Well, spice is basically it's very simple spice on Mbati. You need onions, chopped up onion, and then you need turmeric, you need green chilies, methi leaves, and then you need some turmeric powder mixed together with the raw eggs. Once it's mixed together, then you add the basil flour and mix it together. It has to balance the spice, otherwise it will be like weak flavor and the taste.
Now let's stick with the theme of spices. You're part of a sizable Bangladeshi community here, and you have a number of restaurants over the years. Can you tell us a bit about the approach to spices in Bangladesh?
In many parts of Bangladesh, the various places like this use various spices. Some places use strong spices, maybe hot spice. Some places they have like a mild to medium. There's a phrase, it's like mache mache Bengali, yeah? So that's one of the phrases, like Bangladesh people, they love fish and rice. Especially our generation or our forefather generation. And cooking fish is very simple and very easy, and you can't actually put too much spice in the fish because you need to get the flavor of the fish.
So what sort of spices would you use with fish?
For the fish, I normally use like turmeric powder, coriander powder, and chili powder, basic. That's it.
Well, thank you very much.
Herbs, and then the other side is roasted caramelised apple. We put that in the oven with chocolate, sugar, honey, and some garlic.
Annie, what can you tell us about the history of this?
I think you're absolutely right. It's probably 100, 120 years old, maybe a little bit more. The first, I think, design to try into it as a beverage recliner were late 19th century going into 20th century. Now, at that point, the spirit roll is wholly hidden, so what's known as the dead man's leg in a lot of other parts of the country. So it looks like a jam roll is wholly, but with a finish. At that point, it seemed to always just be potato and onion, which again fits the idea that they weren't to be not sweet and savoury, then.
嗰度油站嗰時俾翻個電話爸爸嘅嚇，去到油站嗰時俾翻個電話爸爸，去到油站嗰時俾個電話爸爸。去油站啊，知唔知油站嘅咩 ？Petrol station 啊。俾翻個電話爸爸先。
Yes, it's still a campaign that that film is going to have effectively their roast meat before it probably and then something sweet at the other end. So when the clobber and the clanger became interchangeable, probably good.
How popular are these with your family?
Well, I wouldn't say they're eaten every day, certainly not, but I think people see them eat at eating games to patronise them, and so I think most everything people I think they're very popular at like shows and things, and if people have got people from other parts of the country to come, or they want to send them out from other parts of the country, it really puts Bedfordshire on the map.
That's marvellous stuff. How are David's clangers?
I think just looking at it initially when I saw, the idea of beef and ale merged with rhubarb and custard, I think that's just revolting. But obviously the idea of going through the savoury end to then get to the sweet, it's really clever. I mean, it was delicious.
Excellent stuff. I'm interested in the business of mixing savoury and sweet in cooking generally. Are you a fan of that, Radha?
I'm a fan. I wasn't always a fan. Think about it, ketchup is savoury and sweet. But there's a really popular dish called boboti. It's an African dish. And essentially, it's almost similar to a roly-poly. It's savoury on the bottom and very sweet on the top. But actually sweet inside as well. So basically it's mincemeat with vegetables, cooked onions, and apricot jam or chutney. In South Africa, they have a particular brand they're obsessed with apricot chutney.
Have me?
And raisins, it's sweet, spicy, savoury at the bottom, and on the top it's got like
Not for you, I think 18 years old.
custardy top. So it's not a roly-poly, but it's a sweet, savoury, Dutch, Asian-inspired African dish. Wonderful.
David, is there one that you are particularly fond of, a combination you think were expected?
Well, I think they're all.
Of course.
Yeah. But my favourite is the pork. But I love the other, we've got the Christmas lights down there with turkey, cranky sauce, that was instantly passport. Another one. At the other end of the Bedfordshire clanger. A round of applause for David Gunn. Let's take a question roughly on the subject from Antonio Rico. Alright, I mean, the bar is so pretty behind here. We have Vince Love and Sam. Fantastic. Why did you want to do a burrito?
That sounds like a TikTok viral recipe. I'd say yassa dokuma. So this is Senegalese West African dish. Dokuma is French. Yassa is caramelized onions. You don't have to citrus chili. It's like sunshine on the fish. You can cook it in chicken or fish or lamb. So make a dokuma, slice it into the chicken, and then spice with a little bit of black mustard seed and black pepper. Layer it up, bake that in the oven, and that's wonderful Afro-French.
Okay, so we've got
I've got something that I actually combine it with like a bolognese with it. So spaghetti, and a lovely curry mix to it, lots of garlic, chili, some nice beef and garlic, a nice bit mango chutney, and then mix that all up the spaghetti, and then throw it on top of the custard with cream, and there's lining curry pieces.
I'd say you should have said my I'm just passing on the information from the producer. So I merged into things of Korean rice dishes, so a kimchi fried rice. And use that as the base for this purposes. Traditionally the purest white rice, which is then topped with different vegetables and meat. So you get that gorgeous caramelized kimchi as the base for the bibimbap, which is in them out of which different vegetables like
It's such a nice one to eat. It's very bizarre. And I also thought we haven't had it yet. So I'm going to go with a Yorkshire giant Yorkshire. Yorkshire Sunday. Oh yeah. Because I feel fluffy, gorgeous, fantastic. Work really well with that soft partnership. So, and then when you say partnership, when you caramelize,
if anybody at home would like to have a crack at Annie's Yorkshire Brulee, if they would like to have a go, we would like to see pictures. Email us, tkc@bbc.co.uk, but I have to say, the Ms. Rava sounds like a very, very good idea. That's all we've got time for today. We'll be back next week with a big tale. TKC finally embraces its true nature. We head to Canterbury to get armpit deep in mango season. But for now, it's goodbye from me, Jay Rayner, Larato Michela, Annie Gray, Samaya Osmani, Jordan Burke, and our audience here in Luton.
The Kitchen Cabinet was produced by Dominic Carmen. The assistant producer was Dominic Prescott. And it is something else production for BBC Radio 4.
It's never a quiet Tuesday on the show program, isn't it? This year's been no different.
He's back with us with more, Chris. What's happening?
The Home Secretary, Joanna Braverman, has been sacked. We're going to be looking back at how we covered the biggest news stories and revealed our best news of the past 12 months.
When we came to make what will be the last Beatles record, it was a demo that John had. News reveal of the year with me, Robin.
And me, I'm Olra.
He did famously do a rap like a go
And the Beatbox.
I think it was Wham rap, actually.
On Radio 4 and BBC Sounds this Friday night at 8.
is the story of the Football League for overweight players, aiming to transform their lives by losing weight and talking openly about their mental health. That story is after the news at 4 o'clock. Now on BBC Radio 4, our series of conversations from the front line of UK medicine. Dr. Phil Hammond talks to one of the country's leading authorities on public health, John Ashton.
Hello, I'm Dr. Phil Hammond, and welcome to Dr. Doctor from BBC Radio 4, where I gently dissect the life of another doctor. My guest today is John Ashton, one of Britain's most visionary public health consultants, whose footprint and fingerprints can be found on many of the most innovative public health initiatives of the last 40 years.
We often say the NHS is the envy of the world, which may or may not be the case, but public health certainly was. Going back to the 1840s and 1850s, town councils competing with others for business on the basis of being healthy places to live.
Born in Liverpool, John was educated at the University of Newcastle Medical School and the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine.
Fix you round the body when you're 18.
哥哥，爸爸要電話。
In the bowels of the old medical school.
爸爸要電話。
Horrible coffee. Yes, we remember that word.
Those were the days.
嚇？Oh no！
Spectator, he
唔得啊！
triaged and wounded at
路站嚟嘅呢度，你唔可以出去啊！ 有好多車行嚟行去呢度。
when found to blame.
你頭先有冇睇下有冇車行過去先開門㗎？
Well, Hillsborough changed my life, and it changed
陣間我哋去 Sainsbury 嗰度睇下有冇好冇？
about public health.
我哋
He
冇乜
wrote
時
a
間。
timely and coruscating book,
Huh?
Blinded by
嗰度
Corona,
有咩？
on
嗰
the
度
UK's pandemic management. He was awarded the CB
We're
in
going to-
2000
well,
for contributions
We
to the
we going
NHS.
have a look,
And
okay？
he's still making them, describing his pet hate
咁樣
as
幾號啊？
any
18號啊
abuse
咁
of
樣。
power or
唔係
position.
19號喎。
When
咦
it happened,
叔
the
叔
John
生
was
日喎
often
今
the
日。
first to speak up loudly and not
Today?
always
Yeah,
diplomatically.
today, now。
Is that fair, John? Could you have been a diplomat in another life?
我哋陣
Well,
間
my cousin John Ashton
打個電話
was
俾
a
叔叔啊。
diplomat, actually. He was Margaret Beckett's global ambassador for global
today.
warming. He was a
Huh?
China expert. And so
So you've got the
December.
diplomatic gene in somewhere, it just doesn't always surface.
we've got it somewhere. Yeah.
Take us back to the very beginnings. Can you remember what inspired you to become a doctor in the first place? Or who inspired you?
Well, it's a strange one, really, because I was going to be a vet right until I came to fill in my UCA
OK，
application
陣間
form, as it
爸
was
爸爸再
in
用
those
啊，陣
days.
間。
And the nurses all fell in love with them, which made it much more complicated dealing with them. And not infrequently, they came to grief, you know. They lived hard and fast, and you thought that the future may not be so good for them.
I have interesting experiences of working with HIV patients who would, again, they became experts in their own condition. They would read the latest paper about antiviral drugs in the New England Journal of Medicine before you'd read it. They'd come in demanding the latest therapies, but then they'd want to go off and take drug holidays. And it's interesting now that HIV has become almost like high blood pressure, hasn't it, in the sense that people can live a long life. And people are now not using condoms anymore, and suddenly they're taking risks, and we're getting more syphilis and gonorrhea and other sexually transmitted infections because people
如果
want to
佢
live exciting and sometimes
have
reckless
sex 嗰陣
lives.
時咧，跟住有個 barrier，
Identify with
變
that
成一個
means
男仔嘅嗰個 sexual， 你知唔知性器官係咩啊？即係你下面啫嗰度啊，邊啊？有 barrier， 跟住咧就係女仔咧嗰個sexual organ 㗎，跟住有個 barrier 咁樣，跟住讓到佢嗰啲 disease 唔會傳染咯，哥哥。
One of them, again, is talking about HIV and heroin addiction is needle exchanges, and the one is reducing teenage pregnancies, and they're sort of
It's like a club.
partly related. Tell us about how you became involved in those and how you got them off the ground.
Well, we'd had the HIV virus turn up in 1984, and that was the period in Liverpool where there'd been 60,000 jobs lost in less than a year. We'd had massive youth unemployment. We had heroin hit the streets at the same time. I'd written a report in 1981 on public health in the Northwest. There was a paragraph, I think, on glue sniffing and a mention of heroin. And a year later, we were in the middle of a heroin epidemic. So we had mass unemployment, youth unemployment, we had heroin, and then the HIV virus arrived. What happened was that we ran across Glenn Margot at a conference in Dublin. He was Deputy Public Health Director in San Francisco, and Glenn had been dealing with this since 1980. Glenn was a gay man who was HIV positive. We invited him to Liverpool to come and bring everybody up to speed about HIV. And he came over in 85 and he stayed for 2 weeks. He worked his socks off. He did workshops morning, afternoon and evening for 2 weeks. Clinical people, media, HR in companies, everything. And at the end of the 2 weeks we said to him, what would you have done differently at the beginning if you'd been able to, back in 80 when the virus turned up in San Francisco? He said, you've got to work collaboratively, democratically with the affected groups. You've got to do it on their terms. And you need to do syringe exchange, because apart from gay men, the other big group that's really problematic is injecting. Sir Donald actually properly trained in emergency planning. Until then, the only people who knew what the emergency plans were the police, the army, an A&E consultant, and somebody in the regional health authority who had maps of rest centres locked up on the wall of his room. And you know, the idea of having emergency preparedness, where the public know what to do if they ever find themselves in a major issue, which is what you find in Australia, New Zealand, America. That has only happened in the last 20 years in this country.
哥哥，你擺喺嗰個架上面睇啊，唔該。
This is Dr. Doctor with me, Dr. Phil Hammond, and my guest, public health consultant John Ashton. John, you've spoken a lot about tragedies and interventions in difficult areas. Is there anything that really excites you about your specialty? What do you have? You could be rightly proud of the things that you've done. Is there anything that really motivates and excites you still about public health?
I think, well, I always say to the students, you know, public health's the most fun you can have with your clothes off. With your clothes on, sorry.
Why do you say that?
If you specialise in medicine, you finish up doing the same 5 or 6 things over and over again. If you're a generalist, whether it's a GP or a public health director, you don't know what you're going to get next, what's going to walk through the door. And it's the same in public health. Constant change and new things happening. And if I look back over 40 years and look at the new infections that have come, you know, we mentioned HIV, Ebola, the mad cow disease, a great list of new infections that have come along, and new issues, you know, the varieties of drugs youngsters are taking and trying to keep them safe when they're taking these things. So the challenges are great. The problem that's really bedeviled public health in many ways has been the separation of academic from practical public health. And out there in the backwoods, the people actually doing the job. And it's very interesting when you look at who was on stage during the pandemic. Almost without exception, they were from the Golden Triangle, London, Oxford, and Cambridge. There were a few from outside, and they were predominantly male. And they were predominantly laboratory and clinical. They didn't have the social science and the wider perspective to really understand how people live.
哥哥，你個 lunch 有冇食晒啊？你冇食晒嘅話，依家食埋佢。仲冇食晒啊？嚇？
And you were onto this very quickly. I remember
聽唔到。
very early on in the pandemic, and in January.
You forgot 咩
pretty much it.
？Okay, pretty much.
The challenges we were facing and what we needed to do better. I mean, you were completely unafraid to speak up, which is what I've always admired about you. Do you ever get any flack for that?
Sorry, I've got all sorts. I mean, if you read my book, you'll see that, Claire Girarda, who was one of your interviewees, said it was a good job that John Ashton wasn't advising the government at the time, Secretary for Health. Stephen Barclay, both on Question Time and later, really said I was out of step with scientific opinion in the country.
Do you think, honestly, looking at it now, given how poorly prepared we were and how deluded public health has been over the last 10 years, even if we've had lovely politicians who generally care for people, they could have made a significant difference. If you listen to the fact that we were so locally prepared, this virus went very quickly on without symptoms, people never had much about it.
What my experience has taught me is that disasters always occur as a result of a convergence of several factors. You know, one thing happens, you might get away with it, two things happen. When you've got 4 or 5 things going on, that's what we get. When you've got
services to public health purposes.
Yes, it was serious, and I was totally gobsmacked by this. Because of the way the health and systems were expected to I wrote back at the house, and there was this WHO, we have to have it. It needs reforming. It's very bureaucratic. It's subject to the same kind of criticisms as the European Union was. But we have to have an agency where it needs stronger powers. We saw that with the pandemic. We need the WHO, but it needs to be quicker on speed.
We need a better definition of health. It's always amusing that their definition of health is not just an absence of disease, but a complete state of physical, mental, and social well-being. Have you ever been in a complete state of physical, mental, and social well-being?
Well, they say it's only achieved at the height of sexual pressure.
Maybe that's the secret to health for all. I think we'll leave it there. Thank you, Dr. It's an absolute delight. I'm Phil Hammond, and you've been listening to Dr. Doctor. My guest next week is writer, comedian, and psychiatrist Dr. Benji Waterhouse. All episodes of Dr. Doctor are available on BBC Sounds. The producer is David Morley, and it's a perfectly normal production for BBC Radio 4.
Hold on tight.
Merry Christmas.
Dinosaurs are great, but the best. But wow.
Who are you?
I'm the doctor.
Dr. Who. On Christmas Day on BBC Ireland.
News at 4 o'clock. Rishi Sunak told senior MPs that he couldn't say how the UK will vote on the upcoming UN Security Council resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. He said that the UK had consistently urged Israel where they can to avoid harming innocent civilians, adding that far too many have done. The Prime Minister also rejected a question from Foreign Affairs Committee Chair Henry Concerns.
Where did you think you should sit?
Look, again, asking that why they had bigger population. But look at responsibility to in charge. There's much of a membership. If the terrorist organisation felt that it was attacked deliberately, embedding itself inside civilian populations, then they have to accept responsibility for that.
Teachers in England will not have to use a child's preferred pronouns if draft government guidance comes into place. It also says parents should be informed if their children say transgender unless there are safeguarding issues. The Scottish Government has announced a new tax ban for the promised rate for higher earnings for next year. From April, it will pay 45 pence of income tax on every pound earned between £75,000 to around £125,000. British Museum has suspended its partnership with BP for a decade after striking a £50 million deal to help fund its renovation plans. The metal company has said urged to end its sponsorship deal with Eurodyne, but the museum said the agreement would ensure the collection is available to the public for generations to come. High Street Meteorological Office has said the number of lava experienced in the region of volcanic eruption has declined since it started last night. So the onboard is the highest amount of views reached 80 meters in the air. BBC News.
Philosopher John Gray says his great find, the iconic writer of dystopian and speculative fiction, J.T. Ballard, in conversation with authors Luther, Great Lives. Now, time for the big league, Jay Unger, two players in football, the men trying to win. They help many of them navigate some of the most challenging times of their lives. Issues of mental health and suicide.
Your company is now conducting a report coverage. We are now approaching Newport Gwent.
Really? Hi. Yeah. Oh, you're right. I'm good, thanks. Thanks for coming to get me. I've come to Newport. The place in the map is that cool. I'm also a player in Salford and have my own struggles with weight. Since MPF started in 2016, it's helped guide me to over £600,000 weight. So we're playing Netherlands. Now, the league has over 150 clubs across the UK and over 6,000 men playing football. But for men like Billy, it's more than that. It's helped many guys to make friends and open up about their mental health, something that men typically wouldn't break down. Well, yeah, there have been numerous times where I've seen the big M and I'm thinking, I've got the new Philly cheesesteak out, or a Big Mac would go down well. I love that you know that is what currently is on the menu. Well, you know, it's not something I'm proud of. So, we've just arrived here. You're about to go get weighed in. Do you think that you lost this week? It's been a challenging week. I'd be pleased if I was sort of in the ballpark of where I was last week. Hoping not for an end goal. That's where you put more weight on. That's it. So as long as I'm sort of in about where I was last week, I can sort of 0 which one's where we headed? head into the waiting room now. Start. Hello, everybody.
I am Stan. I'm a coach of Mallycraft Newport and Mallycraft Cardiff, and we've got tonight, I think about probably 80 to 90 guys will turn up through the doors.
So people will come in and they'll weigh in and they'll essentially battle translate goals that they've managed to move. In terms of weight loss, do you know how many people have managed to lose weight in translate goals?
We've got a really good high success rate in terms of people losing weight. The national average for Mallycraft is about 19% of guys losing weight, obviously we're about there. But it's the stories that come off the back of it. It's, there's lots of guys arriving to the club not knowing many people, and now we've got a really healthy, blossoming friendship group.
My team is the Transporter Fridge Rangers. There's a good story behind this name as well. Okay. I'm friends with Stan, as you said, in Bristol, and one of their teams was the Clifton Suspension Fridge Rangers. Now for me, that's the best name. What's the best name a Mountain Fancy could have? You can't beat it. Obviously, we're going to get away with Suspension Fridge Rangers in Newport, but we've got a good team. We'll be passing away here as Transporter. So that's the second best league in the world, as Paul just said. What about Transporter Fridge Rangers? Hence the Transporter Fridge Rangers name. The best I've ever heard so far is no, that's really good. Borussia Mönchengladbach. Like that.
Now, many of the guys are very good, but that is one point, always different names. Sometimes if anything, the names are a bit of a reminder to not take the football element so seriously. Here are your final scores from across the Manvi Fat League. Real Fatties 22, OB City 5, Unatletico Madrid 8, Fat and Furious 6, Rapid Violetta 10, Inter Miami 5.
So this is the moment of trade.
How it works is guys who have a BMI over 27.5 can sign up to their local club. You get weighed each week. Depending if you lose weight, you get a food diet. You get all the big goals to your team. Now, if you put on them, score an own goal. The goals get added to the final score after the heading match. In Edinburgh, Andy showed me his food diet, and what his food is.
So listen to that.
What a party, man.
No, it's not something I'm saying on the basis. Andre, lovely. Andre's nothing, that's it. I'm just looking at this one. Fish and chips for lunch. Yeah, that's the special meals out on Saturday night. So that's a very healthy week. It's not bad. Not bad. I could have been there. I still want. What's cold, you know? Hey, so a bit short of numbers, like guys. So Gordon will play with the Reds, along with Gary, myself and Rod will be joining the Queens, and then Ali will be the sub, plus and stuff that he's coming out. Who's one to watch? Oh, player to watch, Gary the goal scorer this week, and then Big George going to touch it this, so, and then Colin just beat Chris Edwards Edwards. Colin, I'm playing for the red team here at Edinburgh. Our team name is OB City. When I was on the blue team a couple of seasons ago, we decided to go out and that went over very, very well. Because it's very childish, and we won the league twice running, so it's inspirational. You don't sound like you're from Scotland. No, I'm originally from down south. Moved up to Edinburgh about 6 years ago. Why did you move? For a girl, that's why it's called Edinburgh, I think. But yeah, I wouldn't leave now, especially in well. It's brilliant, love it. Can I just say, you're very good at it. Although I noticed that you get pretty it's cathartic, I think, the boys know, they don't feel like they're really good. Sometimes I can be more expressive. Especially some weeks, you know, I never say it'll change. I'm not
not been great at socialising, especially with new groups. But Coach Chris here, she's really made it a really welcoming, friendly environment.
You always sound social.
Yeah, I have. I've got a few mental health issues that like feed into that. I have borderline personality disorder, I'm bipolar, I have autism, and I've got ADHD. So I've got a nice little basket of a messy little, my messy little balls, as I call them, that I'm always juggling. Yeah. I didn't have the best childhood. My parents weren't together. She struggled a lot. I've got 2 younger siblings, and we weren't looked after as well as we really should have been. And you know, there was a lot of responsibility on me. I'm sure my mum tried her best, you know, she's got her issues, I'm sure. But it meant that I did a lot of caring for my younger brother and sister. My brother has a lot of mental health issues as well. He's heavily autistic. And I think, like, looking at me from the outside, it puts a lot of pressure on me to kind of grow up earlier and to take a lot of responsibility. But what me and other people around me didn't know at the time is that I was also having, you know, mental health issues myself. And you can look back at your childhood and sit there with a psychiatrist and go, that was really happening. But no one was there to say that at the time. So it just looked like I was a bit out of control at times and unstable at times. And dealing with a lot of mental health issues that weren't really diagnosed until quite later in my life. It's been a struggle, but it's like everyone's got their own things. It's been nice the last few years because I really feel like I'm starting to get a proper hold on it and I'm starting to understand my behaviours more.
It's good, but not as much as you think it is. What do you think it on?
It's not as bad as I would have thought.
Life gets in the way, but you're back.
It's a cold Thursday night. I meet Stephen recently across the British Way.
42, got kids, got grandkids, in the house, I'm 20, and I'm having to more that fence and go and work there and time and walls and stuff like that. And then at 5 age,
You struggle to keep up with it.
your knees quiet, and you do something on your ankles, and I'll press straight again, it's just again mentally, I want to do stuff, but physically I'm not able to, and I know, obviously I'm getting on in years, but I should still be able to do that type of stuff, and it's kids to work like that, so I don't want to miss the chance to do some of the chances I'm missing on the kids, so I want to try and use the day for the grandkids, and I can do all that type of stuff with them.
You said that you missed a few things with your kids growing up. In what way?
It is being all about ways. And schools next year now, but I had some years like in the care and KPS and stuff, like I was like shy to get the hand because I didn't know because like I didn't know if I'd be able to finish like or not. Everybody else died on the school sports the other day.
That must have been really hard, emotionally.
Yeah, oh definitely. It's anybody wants to have it in the area and the only reason I am this size is self-inflicted, like not the inside of so I'm personally at fault for making people's miss out on things and nobody wants to put back to themselves as a parent.
How long have you been mother stuff? How's it going?
Depends. How fresh not doing it. Don't think I'm over it. When you see everyone else there, that's just like you. I've got to work on myself here. I'm a recovering addict.
I'm struggling with addiction.
Yeah. God help me. It is all process, but I want it. But when you look at it, is how long it that's when it and you kind of believe it. You think, I'm 30 years gone, wasted. And then you love yourself again.
You say 30 years wasted.
30 years wasted in cleaning addiction, thinking this was it, nothing else. I've never not been an addict, I mean, I still am an addict. But I'm not active. I'm from the end of recovery. I've been on 7 years.
Once we went on holiday, it was Derek and me got us in a wheelchair and overtaking that on the beach. And it's quite a steep hill down on the beach of Derek, and I'm obviously put in a wheelchair on the side, so I've had to pull up and push up. And I've had to stop off in the break and get me some
say, of course, I've been second place. I wasn't pretty much getting more fun. I was massively out of breath and everything because I've been pulling out on the side of the edge. I hurt my back. Got back to carry that and started lying in the chair and everything. The next day it felt better, but because the ego and everything had been damaged and that really affected me with the health, I sort of laid on that my back was still more damaged than it was because I didn't want to let everybody know that like how much of a failure I was. I let them think it was me like the back issue, but I let them weight issue and that sort of thing. It was the fact that I had to get me younger son to be like the man of the house sort of thing and doing stuff that was major to implement.
Feeling better about yourself these days.
Oh, yeah. And now I'll go on holiday when you go to a funeral, I'll be able to turn the wheelchair around myself.
Black Bus Rovers 21, Scranmarino 0, Scranmere Rovers 7, Red Leicester City 6, and Saladdice 4, Inter Milan 12, Ivory Toast 6.
So we're just on our way to Beechwood Park, the cafe at Beechwood, to have our Expressing Yourself session. Just open up those doors to conversations that we really should be having. Don't often prioritise time enough.
2007 ไปเลย
You want to leave the program, but you want to say about mental health, keep yourself checked up. This is the place to do it. A couple of days. I got them all. Then we shall have another one. And then at the end of the couple of hours, it was, oh, we got some leftovers. You want an Americano? Yeah, okay. My sin after Americano. It's like, oh. There were three of us. There was still just like fucking over the trick and tell me like a story from when he's a miracle baby, you know. Every nurse is a miracle in the world. Well, last week was my last week was, and then I started at the last night. So I was using it, so really tough decisions. I love it, all the stuff like here and the boys become friends, family, and we all still on. So the decision to move up to the like my absolute sisters. How was it last night? That was your first session? Yeah, it was my first one ever to a Golden Player. It's a really good atmosphere to me, like, because it's quite a new world for me to watch a lot more lads starting up with movies and stuff, and I look at what we see in there, like coming on like the certain walks and then enjoying the festival more, like the WhatsApp and stuff, seeing like people, you know, like supporting each other. I like the idea of it. You said, look, you want to give people a bit of a higher standard of football to some extent. I like this idea that in your head you're like Ronaldo going to Saudi. I was more Jordan Henderson than that side. So like a lower rank player, almost still. The coffee mornings are going to be helpful sometimes. It's not efficient to man that set up the players, space, cool down, keep down on their feet, all watch them bothering them. Brings us an outlet waking up. They all have a story. One of the guys who helped set it up for the kids was someone close to us who was affected and it's something that's been probably with the fact that I've made myself able to help and protect the audience. Something that can be great. For instance, inside my nails, multiple thinking was I failed.
wasn't there, so then I couldn't protect them. Looking back now, I know that was something that there was nothing I could have done to cope. However, luckily, Stephen was a big student of failure. He was there throughout my life. The person involved, he's now in prison. He's convicted, yes. He's convicted of a privilege for the outcome. He's killed. Yes, once I bumped into him and I was in town, he was in him, I bumped into him there, and I just froze. I didn't know how to react, and I just froze and he was just screaming in his face, what are you doing here, how are you there, why? A lot of people are over the shopping centre, just looking at me, I just couldn't hit, I had physically removed myself from the situation. I had to call my wife straight after I was crying, I was in tears, just going to, she was that I had done something, and I said, no, I took myself away, I didn't hit or anything, I was just not fixing it. That was really, really hard. I would go, and I'd find myself walking towards his house every time, and I'd have to stop, have to track myself, where do you go? What are you going to do? And that was hard, and just that mental struggle every day. I got a panic attack still. I still use medication, but I have a good support system. I have my family, if I'm having struggles, I bring my wife, she's over there. There's a good support network in work, and a good support network for these guys when they've got managing fast and expressing themselves.
We're talking about sort of the coffee morning, we're talking about mental health. It's amazing that you guys still come to share such heartbreaking stories with each other and help each other through it. Really, it seems like the community is kind of like coming back.
We all do it primarily to lose weight, but the way that this organisation is grown, we've got social events going on, we've got accounts to pay for, we've got a social lined up, we've got fires that we have a team for not turning up and doing city day, so we put that on the side and we're going to have a night out. I get quite angry on a football pitch, and I've been learning to pick myself on boards, but all the stressful time you put it into yourself, if you pick the board, then you find time. I didn't pick the board, so you feel like I'm picking myself in. I love that contrast with your anger versus your truthfulness. Yeah. The process I can't afford to pay it up, but just pick the board. Yeah, we've got loads of different times, and it's all going to be different, and we're going to have a good momentum.
My name's Steve, I'm a police operations, I'm retired, very focused. How are you doing in the league? It's not first, then the actions that we were probably at the probably there, but it's the coaching role and there's that together with just the whole season that we see about I wouldn't spoke about it 3 or 4 years ago, but I'm trying to what we say on this business thing, quite a long back, a lot of things were always getting myself into about what I was doing. There was a lot of actions to years, I wasn't here or not, it was emotional, yeah, you know, I had a bad day at work for not to or something, going straight to fishing self-kebab, that was my roster, that made me happy, because that made me happy, but again, starting to fly early working week, also that wholesale conference, and everything's like problem somewhere, it's piling on, not once, no matter what I did, I couldn't get myself out of that one, and then started pushing myself forward, so that's when I started quitting and done the time, yeah. A lot of people think, you know, it's bizarre that you're not taking drugs or you're not becoming an alcoholic, but it should be just as bad. It became a pattern in my life where it was kind of like, I didn't look for friends, because when I had friends before, those relationships would always break down, and it would always be something I would always do my behaviour, one way or another would into that. Secondly, it was just no place for struggle and mental challenge. What do you think was, I
over the last couple of years, I'm a completely different person. A lot of it was two things. One was Mandy Pat. Actually, Mandy Pat's done a great deal, it's been a great deal to Philly. But one of the reasons why I was looking at Mandy Pat is I decided to go to university. So I didn't have the chance, so I didn't feel I had the chance to be younger. But I was really scared of going into that environment. So when I was looking at Mandy Pat, I thought it would be a really good kind of testing ground to be around people, around the people who were going to a place for the same thing I was, like university. That really helped me to get the confidence to go to university. Now that I'm at university, so the Mandy Pat's about those two things have just forced me to kind of gamble on myself and trust myself and trust other people and trust that other people can be a bit kinder and a bit more understanding than I would have found in the past.
Madras nil, Father Rogers 2, to lose weight 6, Just Stop Olive Oil 7, Hockey Lisbon 3, Dynamo Chicken Kiev 8, Port Vale 15, Man City 3. Back in Newport, catch up with them after this game.
How about that? Very good. We didn't get the goal that we needed. Well, we didn't get the other goal. We were talking about that goal and like about an extra goal to make a bit more comfortable. What else do you
Learn a lot about practice. It isn't for everything. There are sort of rules like how it doesn't really work for everything.
No, I think there are going to be barriers. Whether that be something as simple as the time of day or the day itself or the competitive edge, if that's not your stride. I actually recommended it to somebody who I used to know from my hometown, and he was instantly like, not for me, absolutely not my thing.
Your hometown in Bristol?
Yeah, never mentioned it. Never mentioned it. Well, you know, I don't have to go on about it, but it is the best thing in the world.
One of the few things is pleasure. But there's also, another benefit of being able to talk to other like friends and things. Do you feel like you were quite an open book, or do you feel like you're sort of
with my mental health? 2021, my partner and I separated, which was, I think, naive of me to say that it was a shock, but I wasn't expecting it in the sense that I just always thought we would muddle through, we'd get to, we'd find a way, and then all of a sudden on this day, there wasn't a way anymore to move through. We just had a son together, we just bought our first house together, it was great, everything was really good up to that point, and then we suddenly are together, we're not living together, so in the immediate aftermath of not seeing my son as much, and then you start to tell yourself that everything's fine. Sometimes I would just fall back into the pit and no one knows absolutely nothing. I remember just days of complete, utter just despair, like everything I've made over here is gone. Extremely difficult. I remember often thinking when I just felt like everything was unpacked and I had nothing left, and when I wasn't able to catch myself, these things would last for a bit longer, suicidal thoughts would come. But I was always able to check myself quite quickly when that did happen. And I knew I would never do it. I was always very certain of the fact that I would never, I didn't want to die, I didn't want to end my life, I wanted to get better. I immediately sought some professional help. I spoke to somebody about it, and in the first 5 minutes of that chat, she reassured me that it's not uncommon to have thoughts like that. It's what you do next. I've always known that I wouldn't follow through with it, and that sort of began a real journey of discovery for me, where I see a therapist at least once a month.
What do you think helps you through it? As well as your therapy?
I'm smiling because I know for sure what it was, and what I was so lucky to have was my Friday night.
好細聲啲啊！應該你聽到大聲。
Whatever happened, I was coming here, I would have a huge group of friends around me that I could still talk to. They haven't done without that, everything with that routine, the regularity, the friends, the consistency. I don't know how well I would have accepted the stories otherwise. You mentioned earlier, what is it about this group that is so important for John, it's a group of men that getting in great they've been in the same storm as my children.
The League was presented and produced by Jay Under, and if you've been affected by some of the issues raised, details of organisations that can provide support relating to feelings of despair, addiction and mental health are available at bbc.co.uk/action.
Spend time with your favourites.
Got it. September morning, rough boys think wondering not. How we doing?
I'm really down to say hey.
So doing well. Where were you going? Did you find your purpose?
Beloved characters and timeless adventures.
Join me on a quest to find the future.
Sugar plum Harry Carlson, Mary's Haven.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Keep company this Christmas with BBC Radio 4.
And among our Christmas offerings are festive editions of Dead Ringers, Uncanny, and The Infinite Monkey Cage. And as we mentioned that on Boxing Day, Gordon Nutley and I stars in a new radio drama, A Single Act by A.L. Kennedy. They'll both be on the front row this evening talking about their mutual love for radio drama. Now waiting for is Matthew Harris with Great News. A man roasts and eats his neighbour's dog inside a skyscraper. A scientist explores the lagoon over the flooded remains of life. A group of fetishists obsessed over the gory details of car crashes. Some will think unforgettable and frankly horrifying images that sprang from the life of today's great life. The British novelist and short story writer James Graham Ballard, J.G. Ballard. Here he is, talking to the BBC in 2001.
We are a race of partly civilized entrepreneurs who adapt to youth to live in larger scales. If I make you speak are we related? We are a part with Goya. Imagine if two of them small as very small version, well, like a very small version of scripting,
Behind the dystopia, the wild creativity of his writing, what kind of a man was he, and what legacy has he left behind? Well, here in the studio with me is his daughter, Bea Ballard. This is your dad we're talking about. Did he talk as he did in that clip all the time? What was he like at breakfast?
I would say I saw the two sides to him. Surface place, he was daddy, he was my father, and my relationship with him was very much, about that. But then we also did talk about ideas in the world of his imagination a lot, and also as I got older, we discussed what was going on in the world, and I was very interested in politics and in culture, and as I became more interested in that, it was fantastic to have those conversations with him.
And so wonderful draw. Yeah. Did he do that all the time, or was it a little bit?
I think it probably came out more when he was doing it, but he did speak like that, and he was brilliant at those rather sort of iconic statements. So yes, he did speak like that quite a lot actually.
Let me introduce my other guest, John Gray, who is nominated J.G. Ballard, is a distinguished philosopher, academic, writer and reviewer who takes what we liberals would call a rather dim view of the possibilities of perplexing human nature. John, you knew J.G. Ballard, didn't you? What were you friends? How did you meet?
I think we became friends, Matthew. We met as a result of a review I did of Morning Hours,
collections of short stories or something like that for the New Statesman.
Okay, go on.
I suggested to the editor that we meet, and we did meet, and thereafter we met not frequently, but fairly regularly. And I got to know him, to admire him, and very much enjoyed our meeting. His conversation was unique. It was a very direct conversation. You never knew exactly what he was going to say, but it was always interesting. And also I admired his character, which was not simple. He presented himself, as you know, as a very buoyant, cheerful individual. But he also couldn't help feeling that beneath this. I think he was part of the man. But there was also someone else.
你可唔可以睇你嗰啲 WhatsApp 嗰啲 video？ 嚇？瞓覺？
Turned him into by a sort of psychological alchemy and by the practice of writing about it. He did say once to me, which you might have said in some other context, he said, I spent 20 years forgetting what I'd seen, another 20 years remembering it through his writing. Which was obviously very important. He was in concentration camps controlled by the Japanese in the war. What was life like in those camps?
Yes, he was interned in that as a boy of 13 for 2 years with his parents, and he went on to write about it in Empire of the Sun, which, although it was a novel, it's very much based on his actual experience. And I think even before going into the camp, he had witnessed extraordinary suffering and sort of acts of cruelty on the streets in Shanghai. And I think living where he did in the international settlement with his parents in rather a grand house with a lot of servants and, you know, a chauffeur and a nanny and all the rest of it. These people were living in a rather cocooned world, but obviously once he went into the camp, it was a different experience. Although, actually, you know, he maintains that he had a great time in the camp, that he found it a great world of adventure. You know, for a lot of people, it would be a very scary experience, but I think for him, he actually embraced it in a way.
That was exactly what he said to me. He was a teenage boy. Camp was an environment of adventure, something party, but he enjoyed it. He said it was devastating for his parents.
Yes, an interesting man, John Gray. But you've chosen him as your great life. What does he mean to you?
He means, I look at myself, he means to me someone who turned what could have been paralyzing, traumatic into art. And not just any kind of art, because I think the neglected feature of our art's writing is that it's extremely life-affirming and full of beautiful images. He made a statement that he really painted it. Like he said, he didn't tell it. Professor Jordan, I think he didn't become a painter, though he loved surrealism and so on. His painterly ambitions are realized in his literature and out in the kind of galleries of gorgeous images, empty swimming pools, abandoned casinos, low-flying aircraft, and they're all haunting, they're all, you might say, surreal, but to him, they were reality. And here's a sort of, I think, critique. He understood his own personal experience, and he put it this way, that society is like a stage. It's something we need, we enjoy, we love, but it can all be swept away.
I mentioned a few of the famous images from his writing, Pete. Tell us about some of his greatest.
My personal favourite is actually his autobiography, Miracles of Life. He started writing it when he was diagnosed with prostate cancer, and you know, he knew it was a terminal diagnosis, and that he probably only had a couple of years to live. So I love that. I think if you're coming to Ballard, probably Empire of the Sun is the most well-known book, and it is an amazing kind of record of, you know, one boy's journey of survival.
And a Spielberg film.
And a Spielberg film, exactly. And then, I mean, High Rise I love, because, I mean, again, you know, it's been made into a movie, but I think it was I think that was another very prescient work, writing about one of these sort of super high-rise blocks, which has got all the facilities inside, and very elaborate luxury flats and the certain starters essentially go up through the building, so the more money you have and the more lavish or flashy, the higher up. But it's not dissimilar to some of these apartment blocks that are now going up around Hyde Park. I actually know some people that have just bought one, you know. So I think, like a lot of his work, he was predicting things all the time in his work that were going to come to be.
I'm trying to picture the man himself. What did your father look like?
He looked like a rather sort of conventional English gentleman, I think, and sweet, jacket and nice shoes and all the rest of it, and he had impeccable manners. So, yes, I think people sometimes surprised that when they didn't meet this man, because, you know, they had this image in their head, having read Crash or one of the other books, and thought, you know, what's this man going to be like? And then they met this you know, rather sort of conventional, messy, polite and gentle character.
I hear you. Very friendly.
Very friendly.
He like a possibly unsuccessful choice that he didn't get. Let's go back to the beginning of his own life. He grew up in Shanghai, and he described as a pretty jolty childhood in many ways. Then there was the prison camp, which we talked about. What happened after that?
England and went to boarding school, but I think he found England very strange. He found it very grey and very up. That's right, he just mentioned for I think 3 years, and also that they ended up. Yes.
For which he said he said with great respect.
Yes.
Kind of a senior to say.
Yes.
And then he got involved in advertising.
He did. He worked as a copywriter for a while. I mean, he worked for Times, Garden Theatre, and then just like producer salesman. I mean, he did all sorts of things. Then he worked in the Air Force for a bit. But in the end, I think once he met my mother and, you know, they started the family, he was a sort of sensible job, if you like, and he became the editor of pharmaceutical magazine.
You mentioned your mother.
Yeah.
Tell us a little more about her. Helen, is that right?
Yeah. She came from a very different background. Her family were from Staffordshire, and they were sort of, you know, landowners there and kind of country people, basically. They moved out to Shepperton when the children started coming, as it were. My father never left Shepperton and stayed there his entire life. Never left that house. And I think it occupied a really important sort of position in his writing work, because he was a great believer that suburbia was where everything was really happening, and that's the real sort of place where you could get a sense of what's going on. Let's try to sort of hermit like existence in a way. I mean, I love the fact that John had lunch with him on a regular basis, because that's a great honour. I think that it's obviously that he really valued and enjoyed his company.
What happened to your mother?
Oh, it was tragic. She died very suddenly on a family holiday when we were little. We'd gone to Spain. I was only 5 and my sister 7, my brother 9. We'd gone on holiday to Spain near Alicante, and she fell ill on holiday, and she developed pneumonia. And within the space of just a few days, even though my father, you know, got all the local medical staff along, and consultants and nurses and all the rest of it, she died very quickly. And he suddenly left the 3 of us on his own, and then he was up on his own. And even though, you know, my mother's sisters very kindly offered to look after us and so on, he said, no, I'm going to do it, I'm going to look after them. But I think that was not something that was done very often back in those days, that, you know, a single father bringing children to his own.
Yes.
Yes, that's it, the plan and the harm and the war.
Yes. The very was a very strong family. I thought that was part of his life. He didn't think it was just something separate that would stand in the way of part of his entire life. He's at least, obviously not at the most, a science fiction writer. Did he mind, do you think, John, being seen as a science fiction writer?
I don't think he minds it, but he thought it limited his appreciation of his work. And I think the key thing for me is that he took up different genres in his life in order to communicate his vision of the world. And the novel that he asked to write the most, the one I read first, which is a novel of climate change. He mentioned this profound world, London and climate change. Because one of the reasons I like it, and I think it's kind of very interesting, is that we think climate change is a catastrophe, which of course is the way Ballard imagined it is also a possibility of communicating with very cautious when involved the animals and reptiles, and therefore would be, as he saw, could be an opportunity for self-realization. That you mentioned, half asleep, we lay back thinking of the events of the past year that had culminated in their arrival at the central lagoon and launched him upon his moronic poverty and estrangement and his insane alligators, and finally his pang of regret and depression, holding the memory clearly before his mind of one of fearful and the last time he crashed to his right hand, in which the butt of the empty fork eye scratched on the wall below the window, sure that no one could see the 27 days had rested and are moving towards it's signed by his name. In other words, he revealed his out into the third. But it doesn't seem to be a sad end. Yes, he's going to be and that seems to be a tremendously here's a clip of him on Desert Island Disney.
Though I know that's thorough respect. You may feel that maybe you're back, so I've always been but I totally watch that. I'm very proud of it. I'm interested in writing time. I'm interested in truth.
What do you think people get wrong about him? Oh, they get lots wrong. One is that he's a pessimistic writer, and he does think that nothing has a consequence. Neither do I possibly in education. He can't even be proof for one. He can be proof of peers of anyone who's bound to academics. But what he was communicating was how a life worth living and exciting life is really even in these circumstances, or maybe you might even say especially in these circumstances. I've seen that but as his daughter, did you not feel a little weird having a father who did sometimes live in a dystopian world? Was that just normal?
Well, I think when I was very young growing up, I wasn't aware of his life. He was the one that was putting his sugar in the morning, making a coffee, and I knew he was like that. But I think it was once I got into my teens, and then I started to attribute his work, and I started buying the NME when I was at 30. And all these, yes, the Musical Express, and all these very cool, writers were sort of writing about him and say, oh, this man's a genius, and all about Jeffrey Cummings and all the rest of it. It was more than just it was about what was going on in society. And actually, it was funny because he was quite open. Then he started reading it, and he never liked to read it. But he started reading the NME, and he's like, can I have it, and I think he actually really enjoyed what's going on with him.
It was really the rest of the world that told him that your father was
he's a very interesting character, and I think he wouldn't have learned to interpret his work on us. No, I mean, he never said, oh, this is one of my books. He just didn't enforce it, so he let him come to it when we were ready.
Maybe but Madonna enjoyed the big and songs inspired by him. His works have been turned into films, TV screenplays, David Cronenberg.
Even supposedly the inspiration for the Muddle song, Video Killed the Radio Star. Did any of that influence on you, John?
When I saw the film, I liked the war. I liked it.
At what point did people begin to see him as something more than a writer, or a prophet?
I remember the story somewhere 15 years before when modern critics Ronald Reagan he said, you know, you ought to look in a clock. Yeah, absolutely. And he predicted, you know, music in the 70s and also social media. Yes, there's one of the short stories in which no one has except by possibility.
I wonder whether he began to see himself as a prophet. You're describing a very self-contained man, a modest man, but I wonder whether he even sees himself as someone who had understood things about the world that no one else did.
I don't usually see it like that. I don't ever kind of try and take ownership of someone in that way. But I think he was certainly watching all the time how sort of this world was developing. And I know, for example, he was rather despairing of our obsession with consumerism. And I think also he said that thing, I think it's quite a famous quote of his, where he said, I'm just a guy standing by the side of the road with a sign saying danger, bend ahead. You know?
I know what it is. It says here he's speaking to the BBC in 1989. We don't like the media landscape dominated by television, conventional press, by film, which is saturates our environment and creates really a kind of two-tier world in which we all live. On one hand, there's the ordinary world of speech and art and fashion around. But then there's above this, there's this global umbrella which has now sealed itself around the planet and virtually created a secondary reality. And there's constant linkage between the two. I mean, one could almost say that the media landscape of the present day is a map in search of a territory. I mean, these great television companies of the world, great news organizations, are constantly hunting about, trying to find something in ordinary, everyday reality which will match their expectations. You've made your career in television. You produced Parkinson. You still work on Jonathan Ross's show. You came up with the talent show How Do You Solve a Problem Like Maria? Did you and your father talk about TV? Was he interested in your work?
Yes, we did talk about TV a lot actually, and he was interested. But he could also see something like Big Brother and reality television, and he was fascinated by it.
Yes,
you know, and I remember him saying to me once, I mean, just it was probably around the time that Big Brother was first sort of invented, and he sort of said, "Oh, what are we going to have next, darling? It's going to be celebrities fighting, mark my words, you know." And generally,
It was
exactly. And so I think, no, I mean, most of the time in the evening, he did like to sit and watch TV, and for his own pleasure, he liked to watch dramas, and quite a lot of crime dramas, and things like the Watford Files and Hawaii Five-0, and he didn't actually watch any reality TV, but I think the idea of it definitely interested me.
I do think there's something in it, a conscious question when you're not actually working for what some would think of as for the search of, you wanted to drive you down.
No, definitely. I mean, I remember my father loved Stephen and Son, you know, and Dad's Army, and you know, things that you wouldn't necessarily think of him as being his cup of tea. He loved those shows.
Did he make money? Did he become commercially successful?
Well, he made money after Empire of the Sun, but he didn't change his lifestyle at all. He stayed exactly where he was, and it had very little
effect on him, actually.
He did say somewhere when he got the check, he said, I went out and bought myself a can of tea.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't some crazy kind of sprinting away. I mean, for example, we used to go for supper, you know, we did like to go out to restaurants, and once we would go to our local Chinese restaurant, and he'd like to kind of spend money on having a nice meal with the family, as it were, or friends.
What were the routines of his domestic life in his local world?
I know that when the three of us were still at home, I think it provided a real sort of sense of richness for his life. And then he would work through lunchtime, break for, you know, a very useful bit of lunch, maybe with a roll of glass, have a little bit of oil, some cooking oil or something on it, bit of toast, and then go for a walk and then come back and start writing till 6 o'clock, and then it was between and tonic.
What drive up and wanted to turn with his work? Did you have a kind of life purpose, or was he just fascinated by humanity and what we all get up to? I knew he sometimes called himself an anthropologist. Yes. I think he wanted to connect what he himself with the way people actually live in the world there. What he understood, I think, was true, I think, he just wanted to see a world through technology for the whole world in which we couldn't dream. You know, more than what we would have done in their everyday lives. So in television, film, reality TV, and all the rest of it. And he thought he was communicating what he thought meant to be human.
I think sometimes people make the mistake when they read some of his work, you know, whether it's Faust or some of the other work, that he's not advocating this. It's more that you're actually confronting it and saying, well, you know, we do have the dark sides to it, as it were. Let's not pretend they're not there.
If you were in the studio around this table with us, Steve and John, anything you'd want to say, any comments you'd want to make?
You'd be embarrassed in the same skilled workers when they get up and see doctors and dentists for the sake of things that cannot take public and incompetent government that will leave ordinary stores paying more and getting less in return. I think the SNP would point out that it still means that 51% of taxpayers here in Scotland will pay less income tax than if they lived elsewhere in the UK, because of course Scotland will now have 6 income tax bands, that's double the rest than in the rest of the UK. It's quite a complicated system, so they'll point that out, a majority will pay less. And then, you know, that's what we heard, that those with the broader shoulders, Fiona Robson said, should contribute a little more.
Just very briefly, Lorna, the reason for this, and this is only going to make a small dent in it, but it's because of a fiscal hole in time.
Yeah, massive hole. £1.5 billion hole in the budget that they have to.
Let's go.
You know,
哥哥，我哋行啦。
looking at how much was the raise, you know, not a lot actually. Those big headlines, they won't raise a lot of money. The biggest earner in terms of plugging that hole is that fiscal drag, the fact that the highest threshold has been frozen, and that will mean that the higher rate of 42% will now apply here in Scotland to people earning over £42,000. That will raise an extra 200 million quid. So that's the bigger factor in terms of plugging the hole, is the fiscal drag. It's not that extra penny on the highest rate, which will only raise about 8 million quid.
And that's at a raising rate, ACC, Jeremy Hunt, Jeremy Hunt file in Westminster. Lorna, thank you for doing that on Scottish. Christmas, 6 days away. And I want to give a warm thank you to all of you who have emailed with the way that it's going to be a 30 in some way. last night, you might remember, we heard columnist Dan Hodges talk about this as the first Christmas without his mother. We'll have a few more conversations about preparing for changing the format of the celebration. We want to hear from some of these. First, Rona Osborne, who let's let you know.
Hi, Evan. Should I say hola? So, my first Christmas first, well, I'll be celebrating 5 hours behind friends and family in the UK. The reason being, I've been spending Christmas with my partner on an island, Panama, Isla Solarte. All rainforest and 2 houses on stilts snuggled into the forest. We are looking after an ecolodge and 2 dogs, a Rottweiler and a Stroller rescue dog. It has lots of friends. It will be my first Christmas with dogs, my first Christmas in Panama, and my first Christmas in a house on stilts. We're contemplating spending Christmas morning going around the mangroves, looking for starfish and more sharks, which we have to pay down the road. Then we're hoping to film our local water taxi, the main nearby island of Nicolon, for a Christmas lunch. I have no idea what it will be, but hopefully it's an invitation. And then we'll be back to the lodge and the dogs for a classic Christmas walk. No snow, no traditional dinner, no meat pies or lovely sprouts, probably a lot of rain, but hopefully still a very tropical Christmas. Very warm this year, we've got humid wishes and a happy Christmas.
Our first Christmas in a house on stilts. Well, we'll have a couple more in this week. What it is accepting £1 million donation from oil companies at a cost for renewing this project to help fund the management organisation. But the decision to get more deeply re-involved with these issues has been taken by State Research Museum's own climate commitment. There are tips from Edward Laundry, service here, former company. Is this a good idea?
Yes, I do think it's a good idea. The chairman of the Board used to be a politician, and if he's being advised by his civil servants, there's a bold decision. It is a bold decision, and it makes some headline news, but I think it's the right decision. We tend to treat BP as a bribe, and it's got a huge amount of PR, it's been treated very badly by some of the beneficiaries of that funding. But I think this is also imaginative. I mean, first of all, it's sponsorship from a great British company for a great British museum. But also, if you look at the announcement, it talks about a climate energy centre, which is going to make the British Museum effectively a net zero institution. And I always used to argue when I met BP back in the day when they were more of a mainstream sponsor before the backlash really began, that they should take an imaginative approach. They are a company that is moving towards renewable energy, and they could walk the walk and demonstrate what they can do for different institutions when they sponsor. So I think on every level, it's a good decision.
What do you think you get out of it? I mean, I'll put this in a loaded way. What do they get out of it other than greenwashing their reputation to the entire oil companies that they're in power?
Well, I think that's a good question to ask, because in some ways there are big downsides for BP if they do this. They're going to get a lot of criticism, people saying that this is greenwashing, as you say. But I think first of all, let's take all humanity. That's a great British institution, as I say. They are a great British company, so they're putting something back. But as I say as well, if they do this imaginatively and show what they can do to actually help buildings and people transition towards cleaner energy, they can demonstrate their latest technology in a real-time setting, which is visited by millions of people every year. So I think it is greenwashing. I think it's an imaginative approach to philanthropy. And of course, sponsorship is well established, and you get all the other things that I don't think people should criticise, which is you get to go to, get your logo on the display of exhibitions, which again are seen by millions of people.
Well, I was going to think that I just was wondering about perhaps it would make a difference in impact in the process. Getting too much and then with respect to the amount of like
I don't see why we can put kind of unfair burdens on BP that you wouldn't put on anybody else. Banks that is doing this and everything. Baton Riley, was on it. Sponsor the football team there in Baton Riley, putting logos on their football team shirts. And why should BP be tied to us as the most renewable energy rights under a football? It's going to make a generous donation to a great British institution. It should be able to tell people it's done that, and as I say, it can demonstrate its commitment in different ways, both in terms of straightforward philanthropy, but also, as I say, remember this sponsorship is part of a complete renewal of the British Museum. Therefore, will have a hugely ambitious project to renew a building that is, creaking at the seams. I think we should be able to take credit for playing a role in doing that. Well, also just writing comments about it, which will hopefully encourage others to come along and support the British Museum as well. So, I mean, I just don't want to hard do I find the backlash was very odd. Very odd. They demonstrated essentially trained power public prosecutions via electricity stations to a demonstration by our headline for President Edward Norton. What do you want?
And I'm not sure that schools are, firstly, I don't think many people are empowered about what they're doing. But also, what we mean by social transition as a child, that seeing that as the first step to what could be a lifelong relationship. You know, this is a very interesting area of children, it's very cool work, and we need to get it right for them. So yeah, I do feel that the guidance is very helpful, but it's just about safeguarding the child.
What is your reaction to the guys? Well, I agree with that. It's a great first conversation. And you as well, but now we need to have a conversation together. I think the reality is that all countries are racist with our own countries about white people. You felt that no staff is might not be a ideal reception a child chooses to put their trust. No staff that on their own. They just sort of came up with procedures where you could choose.
You've done this yourself, and what's the difference between your guidance and then what the government does?
I think that so talking back to what you were saying around safeguarding, imagine a child, sometimes a younger child, they question and they find someone they trust in school and they question, they open up that discussion. But this is we made a bigger school since the collapse of the youth services, because we gave youth clubs and youth workers about this. But the guidance says, one of the things it says, Evan, is that except in exceptionally rare circumstances, then the school should engage parents early. So the reality is, why has this child chosen to trust this person innocently?
what else is going on in the family, in their lives. So, yes, this opens up the way of discussing all of these things, but there comes a point where the safeguarding responsibilities of child might grasp guidance that is requested for the parents. Not all not all children are appropriate. Not all both parents don't always get out and break up with them. There is a lot of ways and the other thing to say, and I know this is a direct parallel, but in the 80s into the early 2000s, clause 28 or section 28, penalised talking around homosexuality. We can't drive this underground. Now, for some people, they go into the place and they will go out of it. And in a lovely, heartful conversation with a trusted school staff member, this is to be worked through. But for other children, this is about gender dysphoria, and they live in an environment that is same-sex. In gay parents, where these parents can be gay, but because of cultural and religious situations, as I'm sure you understand, very often that's a hard thing to do without a child to the very environment where they are being gay.
Too short, understand the point that too short to narrate clear agreement. This is a first step. Well, time to take a break for another message. Anyone who responded to our call to tell us about a way in which this Christmas is going to be a first in our government, which we do here. And our second tonight comes from Anne.
잠깐 매고 거.
The first time
Huh?
for 36 years, I'm not
Nothing.
working
We
every
talking
hour
about
possible up to
Huh?
and including Christmas Eve.
작은
This is
nothing.
because I quit my long
이게 작은 얘가 좋아 nothing. 근데
as a
작은
Royal
얘기야
Mail
봐봐 말.
postperson after 36 Christmas delivering
Huh?
the parcels and cards
햄도.
to villages in East Sussex. The time has come I had to leave to have a much better work-life balance.
Black.
With this year, I've been enjoying a very
Then be
relaxed
and the
Christmas,
dark rival.
totally exhausted.
係乜嘢嚟㗎？
I am really
Is it a game?
This person, for a few years ago, you might undergo what a difficult job was. I was comfortable with that one happened. Wonderful. But it's exactly what once again last week. President Putin has told a meeting of Russia's top military officials he would be prepared to talk about the future of Ukraine with Western leaders, but he said his country would not give up what was theirs. The Australian fast bowlers Mitchell Starc and Pat Cummins have become the most expensive cricket players in the Indian Premier League, worth millions of pounds. Researchers have used DNA analysis to trace the origins of a 2,000-year-old skeleton discovered in Cambridgeshire. The remains are believed to be part of tribesmen from the far reaches of the Roman Empire. Thanks, Tom. Now this is the year, 2023, that the world saw what a big deal artificial intelligence is. ChatGPT, way Google and Elon Musk have their own chatbot to answer questions and converse in easy ways. But for some, this is the year to start worrying about how quickly, how uncontrolled, and how potentially dangerous AI is. An existential threat to humankind. It sounds far-fetched, but among those warning of the dangers are some who know more about it than most of us. Are they just people naturally disposed to see danger, or are they just there? Well, among them is Jeffrey, who for decades been seen as a leading figure in AI research. He was working for Google until early. When he left, what did he free to warn the world? Born in Wimbledon, he lives in Canada from where I spoke to him.
그거 다 이러? 해주면.
My main coming out was to emphasize that there really is a longer term existential of AI becoming more intelligent, and we need to worry and control what it does. There are also many other more immediate threats that need to be addressed more immediately, such as, for example, AI corrupting elections by allowing people to manipulate elections. So I don't think I overemphasize the threat at all. But there's other threats that I've been talking about for a while, like traffic. So all the defence departments are busy trying to make traffic robots, and European Commission rules that they propose to exempt military and defence applications. So there's a lot to worry about.
What you were saying when we read your words carefully was you don't do AI, scrap it or tramp it in the bin. That's not where you are. And it does have upsides.
No, it's got tremendous upsides. And that's what makes it so different from nuclear weapons, for example. Nuclear weapons are really only good for destroying things. AI is going to be good for destroying things with better processes. But it's also got tremendous positive uses. Already we've seen how useful it is having intelligent chatbots. And it's going to have tremendous applications in healthcare.
Some people have become perplexed really by the kind of the existential threat to human existence. And wonder whether it's a bit far-fetched. But let me just put the question in the simplest possible way. Why, if it's getting like that, can't you just pull the plug and stop it operating? Because it will need some human hand to make it work.
So suppose AI becomes much more advanced. This thing's going to be very, very good at manipulating when it's more intelligent. And it never has sad shows or the certified good for us. It'll find it very easy to manipulate it's doing what it wants. Just as, for example, Trump managed to manipulate people into invading the Capitol. He didn't have to go by himself. As long as he could produce word, that was enough to get out. That's the easiest. And it did the same secret layer. So it doesn't have to be able to press buttons or fingers. All it has to be able to do is talk to the person who's in charge of turning heads and explain to them why that's such a bad idea.
This is the AI going to be bad, or is it going to be people in this meeting?
Okay, so it's a very good question. Is it going to be the intelligence of the AI that speak problems, or is it going to be the intelligence of people control? And certainly in the future, the intelligence of people control. So back to the actual reality of the first law of robotics is going to be do no harm. It doesn't really apply to that whatsoever. So it's the people who give the intelligence to control robots. But in the longer term, we do have to worry about the AI having its own intelligence. And there's a problem called the alignment, which is you give an AI some high level goal, like for example, reduce the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And now the problem is you try to do some thinking about that and figure out, well, there's an easy way to do that, which is get rid of people.
Yeah, but an unintended consequence that wasn't, if you like, built in to the
broken down. And as soon as you want an intelligent system good at doing this, you have to give it the ability to create its own subculture. So like if you want to get to the United States, you have a subculture to WTA, and then you solve that problem, how do I get to the airport? Right? You can decide to the United States, you get how to get to the airport. And we'll have to get super intelligent AI to create their own subculture, make them really effective. And as soon as you start creating subcultures, you realize there's a very good subculture for making almost everything more effective, which is to getting more power. That's what happens to politicians. They may start off wanting to be very good people, but pretty soon their main goal is just to get more power, because that helps them achieve everything else. And the same will be for a super intelligent AI.
And getting more power and therefore they develop maybe
That's quite good subculture. That's not their problem. The subculture is to get more power.
You're sounding quite political. I mean, you don't like the drift of the world, and I was wondering whether that's the case, and whether that's influencing your thinking.
Certainly, I don't like the drift of the world towards fascism because so that one's maybe unpolitical. But my worries about the existential threat of AI are not very much my politics. They're just due to the fact that humanity's never before been faced with the possibility of something more powerful than us. I now think there's maybe a 50% chance that we'll get things more intelligent than us in the next 5 to 20 years. And so we need to start thinking hard now about how we can manage that.
We had a safety summit this year, organised by the British government, as a perspective party. Will have heard about it. And there was
I've got the negative many times.
chance of self-publication. Did you in any way encouraged by what came out of it? There were various ideas around companies having to submit pre-submissions for testing in different types of new applications before they were put into the I'm sorry, but in the case of where I can see in the road I decided not to they've got one good thing. It has about 100 million pounds. It has to actually strengthen this is enough to take open source projects and see how they can fine-tune things like phishing, cybercrime, and making us viruses. That's a good idea. And this is why it's best these large models that can be open source. It takes a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of personal data to be able to train one of these models in the first place. But once it's been trained, through open source, the weights of the model, then other people can fine-tune all sorts of things. It's very easy to fine-tune those things particularly. So, in the past, you recognize phishing attempts by definitely spell checks or attempts at having web pages. It was much better than that, much more predictable. So I think open sourcing this technology is extremely dangerous. And it's good that the UK set up an organisation that can check just how dangerous that's going to be. But by and large, you think the UK tends to relax about it. But not thinking about regulating.
Jeffrey Hinton sending out his views and not providing support Now, we're marking the date of Christmas. Some people say it's your Christmas this year is the first. Among the many emails we received was one from Graham. Yes, now they've been popular. You were touched by it. So why don't you chat to those?
It will be my first Christmas on my own. I obviously had very happy Christmases with my family growing up in the northeast of England, and then once I met my wife, we had Christmases together, and then with our own family. But sadly, she passed away in August 2022. And last Christmas, I had all my children with me. We had 3 sons, and we were all together. And that was all a bit strange, but we managed to get through it. And then this Christmas, they're doing other things with their partners, families. I did have invitations to go and have Christmas back in the UK, but I just felt I needed to kind of learn how to live on my own, have a Christmas on my own, and think of it in some ways as a bit of an adventure. I've never done this before, and I need to find out what it's like, because I'm assuming there might be Christmases in the future when I'll be on my own, so I'm just going to give it a go and see how we get on.
Now, Christmas market is slightly different rituals. The big dinner is usually on the 25th. So that is actually when you will be on your own. What about Christmas Day itself, the 25th?
I do have an invite to go and have lunch with my wife's brother's family. So I will be with some people on Christmas Day afternoon. But yeah, you're right, Christmas Eve is a big celebration here.
How do you feel about it, though? You're not being a bit masochistic about it. You're not forcing yourself into a position which you feel like you're going to enjoy myself.
No, absolutely not.
你睇緊咩講而家？
The way I kind of feel about it
哥哥，你而家睇緊咩啊？
there are moments,
Huh?
obviously I miss my wife.
你睇緊乜嘢？
There are moments that this morning I put out
哥哥，
Christmas decorations.
你而家睇緊乜嘢啊 ？This 係咩啊？
But those moments, of fleeting. You have to learn how to live with them, be resilient, and just keep going. And there are things that I will miss. We've got a couple of family traditions that have a lot of what we still miss. But then again, there are other things that I'm quite looking forward to not having to do. Like clear up the glasses and the bottles. I'm quite looking forward to not having to do all of that this time.
What would Elizabeth think about getting to the
Well, I think she would be quite proud of the fact that our plan was always, our plan from almost when we first met, to end up living in Austria. And I think she would be quite pleased that made it go.
我咧停一停㗎啦，要咁睇用晒你邊嗰啲機台啊。
Making you better at Christmas. And I think she would probably smile and say, yeah, that's just typical of you. You'd rather be on your own.
Thank you very much. Good evening to you. The weather is choppy and changing at the moment. Across England and Wales today, many areas have clouds and some outbreaks of fitting heavy rain. The skies are bright today for Northern Ireland and Scotland with scattered showers. And those slightly clearer skies with some showers are now pushing southward. So through this evening and tonight, most of us will have clear skies for a while. But later in the night, across Northern Ireland and Scotland, the cloud will start to thicken again, and we will see some outbreaks of rain pushing in. Much of the rain will be quite light and patchy, with some heavier bursts developing over hills in western Scotland, and it will stay quite breezy through the night, just a little bit chilly, temperatures around 3 or 4 degrees. Into tomorrow across England and Wales, limited sunny spells first thing, but quickly things will be clouding over the west.
Rain,
some mist and murk developing, particularly for coast and hills in the west. Will be quite breezy, but feeling milder again, with temperatures up to 11 or 12 degrees. Northern Ireland and Scotland starting the day with clouds and outbreaks of rain. It will stay cloudy and damp through the day. Again, some mist and murk. Some pretty windy weather in places, highs of 9 to 12 degrees. And then as we look ahead to Thursday, well, we will start off on a cloudy note. That cloud breaking from the north, a mix of sunny spells and showers, but turning really windy on Thursday. There'll be gales quite widely across the UK. That could cause some travel disruption, perhaps even some coastal flooding around some coasts. Ben, thank you very much for that.
The Housing Secretary warns English councils they could be stripped of planning powers if they block new housing developments without good reason. Big tax rises in Scotland as the Scottish Welsh Government outlined their spending plan.
We cannot spend money that we do not have, and we can't mitigate every cut made by the UK government. We've looked at every single government department, that's going to make cuts so that we can protect those core public services.
President Zelensky rejects the suggestion that Ukraine is beginning to lose its war against Russia. Also this evening,
at 24 crore and 75 lakhs, stolen. One of every bank from Richard Town.
Records tumble, including Premier League clubs splash the cash. Favourite World Cup winning star. The government has issued long-awaited guidance to schools in England to deal with children who are questioning their gender identity. Now, language has been promised for 2018 focus on what's called social transition, change their names, uniform or pronouns. But there is no general duty for schools and colleges to allow transitioning and parents to have possibilities to involve in decision-making. Police correspondent Lauren Martin has the details.
This document from the Department for Education and the Apologies Office is 5 years late, but schools do now, at last, have something to work with. They're advised to involve parents if the child wants to make any changes at school, including name, pronouns, or uniform, what's known as social transitioning. The guidance is not compulsory, but the Minister for Women and Equality, Penny Badenoch, says it will advise teachers of their legal obligations.
There is no general duty to
some transition. A lot of schools think that this is something that they have to do or should be doing, and we are making clear what the law says and what they should do where they are uncertain about how to handle it.
Teachers are advised to be extra cautious with primary school children after concerns that social transition could lead to some making permanent changes later in life. Philip came out as transgender at the age of 16 and says without guidance, his school didn't know what to do.
One of those doctors can say, I want to take my time, so there is a matter of just a plan. I definitely know how to show my different identity. I didn't feel like it was safe to put the plan using them to have that conversation.
Schools and colleges are told they should encourage children to speak to parents, except in rare circumstances when it could present a risk of harm. One mother of a child who questions her gender identity, doesn't wish to be named, says parents should always be involved.
I want the schools to make sure that parents are included in this and what's going on with their children. You know, at the end of the day, to the child, I have parental responsibility. It's up to me to care for them.
The guidance addresses other matters, including the importance of single-sex toilets, changing facilities, and whether some sports should be separated by sex. Jeff Barton is the General Secretary of the Association of Schools College Leaders. He is positive.
This is actually a step towards greater clarity. I think young people know it. If I go to talk to members of staff and I say, oh, you're going to identify what I think is there, or what it is, they are being following the same guide. Also, that would be a child, or people I represent.
Scotland and Northern Ireland already have guidance, and Wales will begin consultation in the year. This guidance in England will now go out for a 3-month public consultation before being finalised next year. This guidance is the first of its kind issued to schools in England and has been subject to much speculation and political debate, which Rishi Sunak announced earlier this year that it would finally be published. Our education editor Brahman Jeffries considers the effects of what's in the guidance.
Most parents will have a view on the issues these guidelines have, but few will be local to them, either publicly or children. It is noisy and often toxic debate, but also involves highly Every family assessing to stress about gender with a policy who also children. Some mention guidelines leading us towards correctly with the emphasis on biological sex and physical safety children. In the 5 years since 2007, there has been a change in mentally support early years. A review of gender challenge is allowing staff to live with gender differences sex with a new potential for psychological impact. Students who have been massive now they can some grasp of that. Once these guidelines are formulated, there is their big challenge.
Michael Gove has announced plans to bring in shade and repeal the Council of England Michael Gove said local authorities would need to provide robust evidence if they rejected proposed housing developments, and that they must do everything they could to seek alternative land to build on. He said the government would also introduce league tables to name and shame councils that are not doing enough to meet total housing needs. He named 7 councils in his speech, including St Albans in Hertfordshire, who he said were not doing enough and must come up with a housing plan in 12 weeks or face conclusions. Leader of the Liberal Democrat-run St Albans Council, Chris White, insisted local authorities were going as fast as they could.
It's not a quick process. You have to produce a document, you then have to send it to various consulting not just the public, but for instance the county council. So we have to wade through all these technical responses about education and highways and so forth. There is a limited resource. The MP for Snowman's wrote in and said, can this council and others like it have additional resources to speed up local plan making, and his department response was made it comes.
But Michael Gove also confirms councils would not have to meet centrally set local house building targets, which were opposed by some Conservative MPs last year, or be forced to build homes on the greenbelt or ones that could change the character of the area. I asked him if he was giving in to pressure from Tory MPs rather than prioritising national housing needs.
There are reasonable reasons to resist development is unattacked. In China, by infrastructure, dramatically changes the character of an area in the form of the environment. And now, there is no excuse for having that change. No excuse for that. No excuse for not more housing.
The National Housing Federation says relaxing local targets would result in fewer homes being built. Labour have also criticised the move. Keir Starmer has pledged to bulldoze restrictive planning laws so more homes can be built. The Scottish Government is now taxing the high limits next year.
Scotland's finance secretary has been grappling with a big problem. Not enough money to pay for all her government's policies. So the Robertson's answer, higher taxes on higher earners.
This is a government committed to reforms to tax poverty and protecting people of power. At the heart of this budget is our social contract with the people of Scotland, where reasonable broad shoulders are asked to contribute a little more. So everyone can have access to the best of services and entitlements, and those in need of an extra help can get targeted additional support.
This would be a new 45% tax rate for those earning between £75,000 and around £125,000 a year. Above that, the top rate would increase to 48%. What that means is, take home more than £29,000 a year in Scotland, and you pay more tax than you would elsewhere in the UK. And £100,000 a year, you would pay well over £3,000 more. Plus, tens of thousands of taxpayers will be pulled into higher bands. However,
we recognise that we cannot address the financial challenges before us with tax alone, or by delivering services and additional wage. Our approach must be progressive and reform.
what that means is public sector job cuts, although Ms Robertson didn't say how many and promised to avoid compulsory redundancies. Labour's Michael Mara said the budget was chaotic.
If Scotland's economy had kept pace with other parts of the UK, it would now be £8.5 billion larger. And the failure of this government over 16 years to focus on the priorities of country rather than party means they now need the taxpayers to bail them out as a result.
Liz Smith of the Conservatives made a similar point.
Ministers have failed to improve public services, they have failed to undertake the public sector reform, which economists and analysts have been warning about for years, and they have failed miserably to grow the economy, thereby starving Scotland of much needed revenue required to close the gap in a huge national public perspective.
Some retailers are unhappy that they won't get the same support as business rates on offer in England. Some local authorities say reducing council tax will lead to cuts, and some charities say a cut in the budget for affordable housing is devastating. But the Scottish Government insists it has taken tough choices to support the NHS and other public services. The budget continues a trend in Scotland under the SNP, moving away from England under the Conservatives in terms of tax.
The devolved Welsh Labour government has announced a series of spending cuts as needed to protect the NHS. Increasing budgets for farming, the arts and the environment will be next year. And of course, proposes a reduction in business rates and targeted restaurants. Opposition parties say the budget fails to plan for the future. Wales wants to make health insurance.
Inflation rates cause tax revenues to be moving upwards, and Scotland's spending plans for next year paint a particularly gloomy picture for the public sector. Half of the
will go on to social services, which is equivalent to advisory to the sector. From that, almost every other ministry is cut. The biggest company in legal affairs, public responsibility, transport, housing, climate change. Budgets for the arts and museums have been hit too. Finance Minister Evans says the decisions they've made are the most difficult in a century of devolved government.
We've gone as far as we possibly can in terms of prioritising across the government. We've looked at every single government department. We've asked them to make cuts so that we can protect those private and public services.
Opposition parties argue that Labour has a replacing in government is failing to plan for the future. Davis is the leader of the Conservatives.
We will not address the chronic impact within the Labour address. It will not address the individual factors that people bring evidence to the state and above all, we will not put more money into the pockets just for money bringing to the bottom of the world economy.
Business rate relief from 75 to 40% has also been unpopular. Aaron Levin runs a campaign covering providing support.
There's more local community than that. The poor, the people in homes, for businesses, whatever support and knowledge is lacking.
Whilst government says its spending decisions are limited by what we see in Westminster, the Chancellor is imposing a fresh round of austerity. In a key statement, UK government argues that the allocation to Wales. DUP's been in talks with London over the operation of the most recent agreements with the EU, the Windsor Framework. After meeting party leaders, Chris Harris said he was calling time for the discussions.
The Windsor Framework talks on all issues of substance have effectively concluded, but we'll always have to answer concerns and any questions on these. It is now time for decisions.
Northern Ireland Secretary insisted governments have made its final offer of financial support to reply to the Scottish Executive. The proposal has been raised from £2.5 billion to £3.3 billion. But the DUP leader, Jeff Thomas, said it was still not enough. He also said Harris had told him the negotiations over trade rules had finished. The other party said that had been made clear. London has tried to increase the pressure on the DUP. For the moment, there's been deadlock.
You are listening to the 6 o'clock news on BBC Radio 4. The main news so far. The government has issued emergency schools to help children questioning their gender identity. Nations cautious approach. The Housing Secretary said counties in England with restricted planning powers will block the public benefits for children. Still to come.
How we can bring
Experts in Iceland have said that the volcano is breaking not far from the capital Reykjavik and throwing out more lava than other eruptions can quickly reach.
嗰度冇安全帶。你冇綁安全帶㗎？如果撞車嘅話咧，你撞落呢個架度咧，跟住你條頸咧就冇咗啦。即係你塊面成塊面冇咗。
Some of the fiery jets reached up to 100 meters. After blasting through the surface, they raced across the volcano. An American tourist, Robert Donald Forrester, wants to know what happened.
I'm very excited to be here in this place, this time, just being able to see the natural phenomenon happen. while they're emerging from the ground. Fast danger in action. It's like something I'm moving. Crucially, the lava has been flowing away from the nearest town. Grindavik, a fishing community home to 4,000 people, was evacuated last month when the volcano first showed signs of flow. The Icelandic government said this eruption does not present a threat to life, now at least. This spectacular show could go on for weeks. Volcanologists worry the gases that continue to spurt out will pollute the air. But they say there won't be a giant ash cloud like 30 years ago, when another Icelandic explosion grounded more than 100,000 flights across Europe.
The Ukrainian president Zelensky rejected the suggestion
Ukraine and its leader are facing a hard winter. President Zelensky revealed today that he's considering costly proposals to mobilize a further 500,000 people. It comes as demand to report ammunition shortages across the long front line. Packages of US and EU support to Ukraine, military and economic, are stuck with policy increased until the new year. Zelensky was asked by the BBC if he thought there was a danger Ukraine is losing support. We don't control the skies. We don't have enough ammunition, but it doesn't mean that we will not find a solution. But the thing is, we need support. Let some weather. It's President Zelensky's job to strike a defiant and positive tone to try to rally his country. But earlier this year, there were big hopes of a breakthrough with an eagerly anticipated Ukrainian counteroffensive that in the end hasn't done much to change the front line. Asked about a reported rift between the president and his top general Valery Zaluzhny, Zelensky insisted the two still had a deep working relationship. On the question of how long the war might take, the president said no one could answer that. Ukraine, he said, would not be let down by its partners. And what if Donald Trump returns to the White House after next year's US presidential election? Zelensky said he didn't think US policy would change, but if it did, he acknowledged it would have a significant impact on the war.
President Putin has taken meeting with Russia's top military officials and this is prepared to talk about the future of Ukraine with Western leaders and the country to give up what was theirs. After its invasion last year, Russia's forces have claimed 4 additional regions of Ukraine. Here's our Russia editor, Steve Rosenberg.
At the Russian Defense Ministry, a minute's silence. Army chiefs and the commander, Vladimir Putin, honored Russia's war. Nearly 2 years after the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, President Putin ordered. In his address, President Putin was defiant. He argued that in Ukraine, Russia had despite Western systems. Attempts by the West to inflict strategic defeat on Russia, as he said, been shattered by the courage and persistence of Russian soldiers. He claimed that Russia didn't want to fight NATO or Europe, but it's clear that when it comes to Ukraine, the Kremlin expects a peace to be on Russia's terms. His so-called special military operation has not gone at all to plan, but the Kremlin needed consent flowing to Ukraine, particularly the West. He would note it as difficulty that President Zelensky had trying to secure a fresh aid package for the Americans. He knows there's a chance Donald Trump will return to the White House. That's his sounding call.
The Israeli president Isaac Herzog said his country is ready for another humanitarian pause in Gaza to enable hostages to be released and aid to be delivered. America said those negotiations can only happen after the war ends. The UN Security Council is debating the wording of a resolution that will call in some form for a stop to the fighting. The motion is reported to have been changed from demanding a cessation of hostilities to a suspension in order to avoid another veto by the United States. Rishi Sunak has admitted that he has not set himself a deadline to stop migrant boat crossings. He was answering questions from the Commons Liaison Committee, which is made up of the chairs of the other committees and is the only one allowed to quiz the Prime Minister. On Parliament's last day of the year, our correspondent Nick Hursley considers whether Mr Sunak is fulfilling the 5 pledges he put himself on its opening day.
Setting out his priorities at the start of 2023, Rishi Sunak said his government would stop the vote. Numbers crossing the channel this year have fallen by a third, but they are still the second highest on record at around 30,000. The plan to send some migrants to Rwanda will be met with hope. The government is struggling to remove enough people from the UK. Asked at the liaison committee when he wanted to achieve his goal, Mr Sunak did not provide details.
Well, there is a plan there. I've always been saying from the beginning. I said, and we will keep going until we do. And this is not one of these things where there's a precise date.
The Prime Minister pledged to reduce NHS waiting list. Meanwhile, it's going the wrong way. The number in England has actually gone up. He said industrial action will be inflation. Inflation has halved what Mr Sunak said he wanted, but the price to deliver growth remains in balance, as does a promise to bring down debt. Debt has actually gone up this year, which decreased the business authority to youth governments, saying it's claiming that debt is falling based on protections is confusing and may undermine trust. Economists report that Ofsted inspection activity in the British Free Ferry has overlooked the public rate of 30
The inquest into the suicide of Nick Curry found that an Ofsted inspection in November 2022 had contributed to her death in January this year. The senior coroner for Berkshire, Mike Connor, has now issued a prevent future deaths report, which is a legal duty when there are concerns that other lives might be at risk. The court points out Ofsted did not carry out a review to learn lessons after Nick Curry's death. It adds there was an absence of training policy to deal with the head teacher becoming very distressed during the inspection or to call for protection. Although Ofsted has worked with teachers and shared findings with colleagues despite warnings about confidentiality, coroner says this is not in any written policy. But really, how long it takes to public documents after inspection. Ofsted and the Education Secretary Julian Keegan have until the 7th of February to respond. The British Museum has extended its charge to archaeologists and said the £50 million fund of the city for the next decade will fund renovation work to expand in central London to ensure its collections will be available for people for generations to come. Climate change campaign is the urge the museum to end the British Museum. In the city, there has been shared that Wednesday up to 7,638. The Dow Jones is up 190 points, 27,496. On the currency market, $1.27. The euro stands at €1.16.1. Euro was 86.2. Yet the record for the most expensive fare in the history of Indian Federal League was smashed today. First, fares will tend to see a pattern coming from £2 million. Tonight, riders will literally start from £2.4 million. Works out at about £7,000 for people who take the road from the News correspondent James.
Last month, Australia defeated the host nation Ethiopia in the World Cup final. The reaction from the franchises of the Indian Premier League seems clear. It was largely filmed by them. It was Australia's captain Pat Cummins first. Sunrisers Hyderabad fought off rival bidders to get the fast bowler for close to £2 million. That was a record for the breeze. Till another Australian fast bowler came into the hammer.
At 24 and 75 lakhs, what a weapon shot for Richard Starr.
From rupees to pounds, that's nearly 4 million. Playing went over cricket for about 2 months. Starr will be 34 in the new year. Kolkata values experience and left-arm bowling skill, but that value is inflated by the competition in Yorker, part of the IPL identity, ostentatious spending to reinforce the status of the cricket powerhouse. Reaction included a video posted by one of Australia's best-known cricketers, staring wide-eyed at the camera, then felt severe. She's the captain of the Australian women's team. She's Stark's wife.
Researchers have used DNA analysis to trace the origin of a 2,000-year-old skeleton discovered in Cambridgeshire.
systematic part of the solution. As far as the peace of the building schools, which covered ensures the safety of every man beyond the intelligence.
This latest research marks the conclusion of the detective story. One has used cutting-edge forensic science to plot up the history of a real person. A young man buried in a ditch in Russia in 126 and 228 AD during the Roman occupation of Britain. Researchers suspect that DNA used to clone this here, but this preserved part of the entire skeleton. They publicly established it was a summation from the magic is now sent to Russia and Ukraine. Roman documents show that tribes of R1,000 of them were recruited from Gentiles cavalry, but their horse riding skills was British. According to Dr. Smith, Mona Edmondson, subject documentary excavation, this is the first biological proof of presence here. It says discovered preaching as the church life in the countryside of early Roman Britain.
Bob? You okay? Are you okay?
The new scientific techniques make stories of ordinary people rather than those of the wealthy and powerful, who usually dominate the records of great historical events.
During its first Christmas with the community tree, Mr. Tim went high to record himself in the valley. He struck somebody that was behind. Before Christmas, illuminations were paid for by Richard, counted looking to organize the tree and replace it.
Both myself and the community were in for the shock. It's a really sad situation that somebody would do this, especially this time of year, to a wonderful community Christmas tree. So I'm rallying around today along with some of my community members to try and get another string of lights attached to the community tree in time for Christmas.
Third last day, ministers of British schools and nations will always guide me not to even question their gender identity. In January after that, and this year, and discusses 10 decision-making. The Housing Secretary has spoken to Union City councils in England to block or delay housing development for no good reason. The tax ban of 25 pence per pound is now the Scottish Government and is effective April. The Welsh Government is now considering suspending taxes immediately to protect the NHS. President Wilson
observations is that, and this time his topic is the journey. And speaking of the journey, which do you prefer? Overground? Underground?
This Christmas, Indian Paul takes to rumors in the comments.
Now then, young Longley, you're holding up the snowball. Which means you'll be going out onto the common on your own.
The Waffle on BBC Radio 4.
Come across as people.
Classic stories performed by Richard E. Grant.
Remember, young Longley, it's our duty to get the common targets.
The Waffle. Monday to Friday evening at 6:15 on Radio 4 and Town on BBC Sound.
Now, the writer, comedian and poet Eddie Normal returns with this, the 11th episode, taking a series of poems, poetry and stories.
Thank you. My name's Henry Normal, and in this show I'll be taking you on a journey to explore the field of journey. That is the act of travelling from one place to another, from the American pop rock act. Although we've never been waiting for me to do a show about that particular band, but no stopping me. Hold on to that feeling, don't hold me back. Time here tonight in a lovely northern town, Berry. Thank you, Berry, of course, means everybody with their country. I'm particularly fond of Berry and the Northwest as I travelled here in my youth to my favourite place. But a local poet concert tried to get me back to Berry for swearing to the North End. I didn't know this was turf. I love that people in Berry are proud of their town. I did a tour last year and I put a post on Facebook saying how great the show was and someone replied, well, usually they show in Berry. So I watched the Tory Party conference recently in Manchester held in what used to be a train station. It's called the Irony of One Loss. The Tory government, they couldn't get out of Manchester quickly, could they? If only there was high-speed railway. So I shall be using poetry in the show. W.H. Auden said, poetry might be defined as clearly. Jean Cocteau, French poet and maker of the Cocteau Twins, said the worst fate of a poet is to be admired without being understood. And I think that hopefully he took perfectly. So I've been journeying a lot recently on before, but I do now have to limit myself twice a year. Anyway, bring this one about me tour called the World Tour so far. The virtuous tour of the world. Now I put a second. But I've done bigger. If you're going to lie big is a thing. I picked that up from Donald Trump. Some people love him though, don't they? There was a woman on the television today who was saying Donald J. Trump is a genius. That's not the J. Trump. The theatre was full of all. The crowd was huge in Bruges, even bigger in Riga. It was normal mania in Lithuania, just one bloke in Uzbekistan. I was hailed as unique in Mozambique, superior in Nigeria, a star in Woodbridge Farm, a dick in Public. In Glasgow, I was hot as Tabasco. In Bristol, I was a pistol. I left them merry in Bury. But in Didcot, I didn't. At the Vatican, they said it never did happen. In Yorkshire, I can now state I passed myself a bit. But my first real journey was on holiday. Now, as a kid growing up in Nottingham, Dad drives to Lincolnshire to Ingle Mells, and myself and my twin sister would sing in the car, Ingle Mells, Ingle Mells. Ingle all the way. For 3 hours solid. Oh my God, he loved it when we reached the sea. Now my sister Linda, in order to secure the consequences of what she thought is, she checked that no one left any packages. Now she was travelling to Australia, and when she first got on the plane, she looked up at the empty seat and sees that someone has left a pair of shoes. So quickly she gives them to a member of the cabin crew. The aerostess just manages to get them out of the airplane before and then sits back and they start with that and I wouldn't come back to the toilet. And it says wear shoes. That was a very long journey. Just a takeoff is a very dangerous part of the flight. So I always try to relate on the flight side. Because what you're wearing when you go is how you'll appear as a ghost. And no one's going to take haunting seriously, if you're wearing all of these lights on. So each day is a new journey. I like to do Wordle. You like to do Wordle? Yes, I like to do. I do Wordle and then I do the Wordle. That's how Wordle is called. And then I do the Wordle sequence. You have to do all the Wordle. And then you observe. And then you observe the sequence. You have to do all. And then you blossom. That's the word game like a flower.
fifth skinhead test. But as this is Radio 4, probably. At 14, I had a centre party. Oh, look. Seemed odd to me that skinheads, they didn't want to conform, they wanted to be individuals, so they all shaved their heads exactly the same, and they wore the same clothes. It's a paradox, which is what, of course, they wore on their feet. My favourite joke in the show. A year later, I had to have a skinhead cut myself, like the rest of the council estate, because the knickers were stored. I was going to my granddad's one day, and my dad, he's got the eggs, well, I say, they were white, if you remember. So he got that metal coat, and he straight down until it bled. Turned out to be psoriasis. Just comes back worse. I thought I'd read you a poem I wrote back in my early years. This is a poem I wrote last. I've looked for you all my adult life, the proudest of my achievements, the environment of your company, the possibility of every relationship, the eye contact of every stranger, the opening of every door, and the window of every train, and every arrival out to sea, in loud and smoke-filled rooms, over the rim of every glass, across every public gathering, down the line of every queue, in the clear of every headlight, in every face of every crowd, in the most beautiful landscape, in the closing of every curtain, and look for you. Now when I got back home from Horley recently, and COVID, so I had to sleep in a separate room, and I didn't want to. I said to Andy, I don't mind it. I know we're getting on with it, but I don't want to become just flatmates. I'm still romantically attached, and I want us to be romantic. And he came over and said to me, "Come." Then weed yourself a little. Still got it. The BBC repeated one of my radio shows one day, and Annie said, "Do you want to listen to it?" I said, "I don't like the sound of my own voice." And she said, "Nobody does." I said, "You mean nobody likes the sound of their own voice?" She said, "No, nobody likes your voice." She's very good at grounding me, and it's good to be grounded. These days, I feel I'm being lured into a culture of entitlement. Have you seen that advert? L'Oreal. Because I'm worth it. What's that about? What are we teaching our kids? And there's ads that say, "You deserve this product. You deserve it." Now, that's when I was a kid.